Chapter 372. Everyone present was used to it. These two people represented the top sects of the Orthodox and Devil sections. As long as one of them appeared, the other would definitely come out to fight. If it was another sect that appeared first, it would be better. However, when the 10,000 demons appeared first, how could Dongfang Chang'eo, who represented supporting Xian Island, sit back and do nothing? The two of them were at loggerheads again. The people from the other sects shook their heads and smiled bitterly. They returned to their positions. It was better not to get involved in the affairs of these two guys. The two of them looked at each other from the corner of their eyes. They snorted coldly at the same time and turned their heads to the side. At this moment, one person from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons each held a storage bag and went up to the stage to pay the spirit stones for the two of them. Zi and Wu Lixue took the storage bag and quickly injected their divine senses into it to count. It was the first time for the two women to personally handle so many spirit stones. This was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. Wu Lixue looked a little excited while Zi looked solemn. She thought that these spirit stones were related to the great trust of Senior Bai. After counting, the two of them nodded to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and a kind smile appeared on his face. He turned to Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan below and rubbed his hands. Then he raised his hand and said, "I wish the two seniors victory in advance. You may begin." There was a table in the middle of the stage with an hourglass on it. Wu Liqing came out and turned the hourglass upside down. The fine sand flowed backwards. There was only a moment, but this moment was worth tens of millions of spirit stones. Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan did not dare to waste any more time. Their figures flashed, turning into two afterimages that appeared in front of the two sabers in the blink of an eye. The people from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons could not sit still anymore. They all stood up and stared at the two of them without blinking. It should be known that Luo Qingtian's cultivation was not weaker than the two of them. In the end, he still ended up losing an arm to save his life. Because these two people had been representing the number one sect of the righteous path and devil path for a long time, no one could show weakness. The people from both sects looked at the two of them with a bit of holiness in their eyes. The people from the various sects also held their breaths and focused, paying attention to the changes that would occur when they drew their swords, so that they could use it when their side went up. Seniors, please be careful. These two treasured sabers have already developed a spirit of their own. When I was subduing them, I spent a lot of time and effort. If you don't have the confidence, don't force yourself. Otherwise, the backlash from these two treasured sabers is not something an ordinary person can withstand. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted. Hearing that, all the sects looked at Yu Qianqiu and cursed him in their hearts. Why didn't you say it earlier or later? Why did you wait until the other party paid up? Aren't you just trying to scare them? However, when they thought about how he said that these treasured sabers had developed a spirit of their own, their bodies trembled, and the words spiritual treasure appeared in their minds. Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan did not notice anything wrong with the sabers in front of them. They looked at each other tacitly and reached out to grab the sabers with solemn expressions. The group of people who were watching also had their hearts in their throats, especially the people from supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons. Buzz. The two sabers suddenly let out two sounds of their own. Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan's expressions immediately changed. A bone-chilling coldness instantly emanated from the sabers, directly resisting the approaching hands. Then a ruthless and cold aura of death pressed on. The two of them immediately felt a little dazed and their bodies became a little weak. Something's wrong. Someone exclaimed. Everyone also realized that something was wrong. The two of them were sent out by the number one sect of the righteous path and devil path to keep up appearances, so it was needless to say that their ability to respond to emergencies was extraordinary. After feeling that something was wrong, they subconsciously bit the tip of their tongues, and the pain woke them up. They both retreated, and in a flash they were more than 10 meters away. Their faces were full of shock as they shouted, "Good sabers!" Everyone immediately stood up. Luo Qingtian had lost an arm to save his life, and Dongfang Chang'eo and Qiu Wuyuan could not even get close to it. The three tribulation passing stage experts' attempts had confirmed the power of this saber without a doubt. Many people's gazes towards the Daluo sect had changed. They were no longer looking at the Daluo sect with mockery. Instead, there was a hint of admiration in their eyes. Luo Qingtian, Dongfang Chang'eo, and Qiu Wuyuan were all cultivators who had advanced to the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. Although the former had lost an arm, he had once held this saber, and the latter two could not get close to it. From this, it could be seen that the Daluo sect leader was indeed not someone ordinary people could compare to. He truly lived up to his reputation. When the people from the Daluo sect felt everyone's gazes, their faces showed a little bit of pride. It was as if they were saying, "Now you know." It's not that the Daluo sect is weak, but that these two magic treasures are really powerful. At this moment, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan released their aura shields at almost the same time. Just as they were about to draw their sabers again, they suddenly heard a dang 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 sound coming from the main platform. The two of them turned around and saw that Yu Qianqiu was holding a gong in his hand. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the hourglass with the gong in his other hand and said with a smile, "Seniors, I'm sorry, time is up. It's time for the next group to go up. Please step down for the time being." Time was up so soon? 10 million high-grade spirit stones were gone just like that? Not to mention the two people who drew their sabers, everyone's eyes were focused on the hourglass. They were deeply suspicious of the hourglass's effect. In fact, they had wronged Yu Qianqiu in this matter. It was just that everyone was so engrossed in the competition that they forgot about the time. Although Yu Qianqiu had the idea of tampering with the hourglass, he was worried that there were too many people present and was afraid that he would be exposed, so he dismissed the idea. Dongfang Chang'ao was stunned, while Qiu Wuyuan was furious. Yu Qianqiu ignored them and shouted, "In order to save time, we will arrange the matches according to the order in which the spirit stones are paid. Those who pay first will go up first." Wu Sihai frowned when he heard that. Even if they wanted to earn money, they didn't have to do it so blatantly. He couldn't say anything, so he quietly retreated backstage. If he continued to stand in front of the stage, he really couldn't afford to lose face. On the other hand, his granddaughter Wu Lixue looked at the various sects with excitement. There was a lot of money to collect. The various sects were speechless. Although they knew that Yu Qianqiu was obviously trying to get money, who would give up? Wasn't everyone here for the treasure? However, this Yu Qianqiu was really good at messing around. If others had such a treasure, they would hide it, but he took it out openly to cause trouble, making it inconvenient for those who wanted to steal the treasure. They could only wait until he was alone in the future. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan did not return after a long time. The sects that the two belonged to immediately understood that they wanted to try again. Immediately, the two sects brought a storage bag to the stage and paid another sum of spirit stones for them. Yu Qianqiu waited for the two ladies to confirm the amount, then smiled at the two who did not go up. "Seniors, please continue." Wu Liqing, who was below the stage, turned the hourglass upside down. "This guy is too practical." Dongfang Chang and Qiu Wuyuan's expressions twitched. They did not want to argue with this greedy guy now to avoid wasting time. The vigor shield on their bodies became brighter and brighter, and they flashed in front of the two swords. Just as everyone was staring at them, they suddenly saw the two of them raise their heads to look at the sky. Then they quickly retreated. Swoosh! A cold light shot down from the sky, and with a bang, a large hole was blasted in between the two swords. A wave of air spread to the surroundings, and a flying sword flew out from the hole, turning into a cold light and shooting back into the sky. Many people immediately flashed out from the sheds around them. They looked up into the sky and saw a flying instrument slowly descending under the crowd's gaze. F***CK. Someone is causing trouble. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows, turned around, took the 4 storage bags from Ziyi and Wu Lixue, and threw them into his own storage bag. Just as he was about to go over to take a look, he saw more than 10 figures flashing out from behind him, and he stopped. Although he was angry that someone was disturbing him while he was making money, those who dared to cause trouble in such an occasion were not ordinary people. He decided to take a look first. "How dare you? Who dares to cause trouble here?" Qiu Wuyuan stared at the sky and shouted loudly. More than 10 experts from the 10,000 demons stood behind him, and all of them were staring at the sky like tigers watching their prey. The domineering aura of the Devil Dao was undoubtedly revealed. The flying instrument was suddenly taken away by someone in midair, and 8 figures landed in front of the crowd. Almost everyone knew the person in the lead. It was the original young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, Yan Zhuixing. And many of the 7 people behind him had met them before. They were Imperial Advisor Di Rong and Man Hu's senior and junior brothers. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Qiu. Greetings, Martial Uncles of the 10,000 demons." Yan Zhuixing courteously bowed to the 10,000 demons. The 10 people from the 10,000 demons were instantly discouraged, and they looked at each other in dismay. The domineering aura they had at the beginning was nowhere to be seen. Qiu Wuyuan looked around awkwardly and said in a muffled voice, "What are you doing here?" The previous leader of the 10,000 demons, the grandson of his master, came to cause trouble. What else could he say? "If you don't have the confidence, then get out of the way." Dongfang Chang Ao sneered at Qiu Weiyuan rudely. These two people would not let go of any opportunity to mock each other. Qiu Weiyuan glared, but when he saw Yan Zhuixing beside him, he immediately shut his mouth speechlessly. Yan Zhuixing, are you declaring war on the Chinese cultivation world? Dongfang Chang Ao snorted coldly, a golden spear appearing in his hands at some point in time. Senior Dongfang, you misunderstood. I heard that there is a saber drawing conference here, so I specially rushed here overnight to participate. I definitely have no other intentions. Yan Zhuixing smiled gently. You are not welcome here, please leave. Dongfang Chang Ao held the golden origin treasure spear horizontally in his hand, and behind him stood a dozen experts from the cultivation pavilion of Fuxian Island. Yes, you are not welcome here, go back. A group of people followed and jeered. Yan Zhuixing turned a blind eye to them and smiled faintly. I heard that anyone can participate in this saber drawing conference as long as they can fork out 10 million upper-grade spirit stones. I wonder if Brother Yu, who is organizing this conference, is here? He looked around the crowd and after a while his eyes met with Yu Qianqiu's. Their eyes met and did not separate for a long time. Everyone in the cultivation world knew about the grudge between them. If not for Yu Qianqiu, the Yan father and son would not have been forced to flee overseas. Ah, so it's Brother Yan, long time no see. Yu Qianqiu jumped down from the stage and walked over. He cupped his fists and smiled from afar, as if he was an old friend who had not seen each other for a long time. Ziyi also felt that something was wrong and quickly followed behind him. Wu Lixue also did not want to be left behind. The crowd parted to let them in. Yan Zhuixing also smiled and cupped his fists. Indeed, long time no see. I have been sending people everywhere to ask about Brother Yu, but unfortunately there has been no news. I finally see you today. Chapter 373. What good can you have for me? It's good that you don't fight with me. Yu Qianqiu touched his nose, and they looked at each other silently for a while. Suddenly they laughed together. When they laughed, their eyes were still entangled with each other. Yu Qianqiu found that there was something missing in Yan Zhuixing's eyes. In the past he could at least see some pretentious hypocrisy in it, but now it was really cold. His eyes were unbelievably calm, as if they were carved out of ice. There was no emotion in them. Although he was smiling, his eyes were incompatible with his whole person. There was only indifference in his eyes that could not be concealed even if he wanted to. Yan Zhuixing also saw something from Yu Qianqiu's eyes. It was the sincerity and enthusiasm of meeting an old friend. However, Yan Zhuixing would not believe that a person who could make up a story to frame him would welcome him sincerely and enthusiastically. Yan Zhuixing looked away and glanced at the women on the left and right of Yu Qianqiu. He did not know Ziyi, so he just glanced over her. However, when his eyes fell on Wu Lixue, his cold and ruthless eyes actually showed signs of melting. He cupped his hands and said, Miss Wu is also here. I didn't expect you to be even more beautiful than before. I don't know if you still remember me? As soon as he said this, the 7 brothers behind him exchanged a surprised look. They seemed to feel that it was a little unbelievable. Although Wu Lixue knew that Yan Zhuixing had a grudge with her man, it would be strange for a woman to be unhappy when someone praised her beauty. She smiled and nodded, but she did not say anything. Instead, she looked at Yu Qianqiu with a gentle gaze. At this time, Yan Zhuixing noticed that the man and the 2 women in front of him were wearing red flowers, which was quite a happy life. The smile on his face suddenly froze. He pointed at the big red flowers on the 3 people and said, Brother Yu, what are you doing? Could it be that I came coincidentally to run into Brother Yu's happy event? Yu Qianqiu followed his finger and looked at the flower on his chest. He quickly denied, No, it's just to add to the atmosphere of the sword-drawing event. As he spoke, he pointed at the red hanging in the surroundings. Yan Zhuixing looked over and realized that not only Yu Qianqiu and the other 2 were dressed like this, but many others were also dressed like this. He immediately stopped thinking about this matter and asked, Brother Yu, I heard that this saber-drawing competition is held for the entire cultivation world. Anyone who can fork out 10 million upper-grade spirit stones can participate. But now someone wants to drive me away. I wonder what Brother Yu, the organizer, will say? In the past he was so poor that he had to resort to robbery, but now he seemed to be rich. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and glanced at the surrounding sections. He saw that everyone was staring at him. Their intentions were clear. They wanted him to get to know everyone. I, Yu Qianqiu, have always been a man of my words, but... Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, There are no more seats here. He wanted to earn money now, but in front of all the sects, he could not blatantly go against them. He rejected them very tactfully. It's fine. I don't dare to hope for a seat here. We can just find a place to stand. Yan Zhuixing said indifferently. Dongfang Chang'eo snorted and said, I already said that you are not welcome here. With Dongfang Chang'eo taking the lead, all the sects immediately followed and jeered, Get lost. You are not welcome here? Yan Zhuixing glanced at everyone coldly. Man Hu was behind him, walked forward and laughed. Why are you in such a hurry to drive us away? Could it be that there is no one in the cultivation world in China who can pull out this saber? Are you afraid that we will steal the limelight? A few of his fellow disciples laughed together. With the cultivation of the 7 of them at the end of the tribulation passing stage, they were confident that no one present could trouble them, so they were arrogant. When the various sects heard this, their faces were already filled with anger. They might make a move at any time. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to ruin his business at this moment. He pointed at the big hole in front of him and smiled bitterly to Yan Zhuixing. Brother Yan, I wonder which one of you made a move and destroyed this place? The 7th of the 7 Man Hu brothers stood out and patted his chest. I saw that it was so lively down there, so I couldn't help but make a move. His arrogant look seemed to be saying, I did it, what can you do? Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him and complained to Yan Zhuixing. In order to rent this place, I paid 10 million high-grade spirit stones to the Wu clan as a guarantee. The moment you came, you want me to lose 10 million. What kind of logic is this? Forget it. Brother Yan and I are friends, so I will pay for it. Brother Yan better find a place to rest outside. Yan Zhuixing naturally understood the meaning behind his words. I paid 10 million for you the moment you came, and you still have the nerve to make things difficult for me? Old Seven's eyes widened as he stared at the hole and shouted, Nonsense! It won't cost more than 10 million to build this rundown place. Brother Yan, is this your subordinate? Why is he scolding me in front of my face? Yu Qianqiu's voice sank. He turned his head and said, Ziyi, make him shut up. He believed that even if Ziyi couldn't gain the upper hand, she would be able to scare the other party into being obedient. Otherwise, that soul formation stage father would be for nothing. Ziyi's expression changed at the mention of money because of Yu Qianqiu. She knew that there must be a motive for Yu Qianqiu to suddenly take out 10 million. Hearing that, she didn't say anything else. A purple shadow appeared and rushed at 7th brother. The speed was so fast that it was unbelievable. Everyone present was shocked. Old 7 immediately felt that something was wrong. He teleported into the air. Who would have thought that while the purple shadow was still below, another purple shadow appeared in front of him. Immediately after, a loud sound rang out in his face. He didn't know what happened, but he was slapped by someone. Don't look at this slap because it was from a woman. The strength of the slap was so strong that it made old 7's ears ring. The people below were speechless. A late-stage tribulation transcendence stage cultivator was actually slapped so easily. Stop! The 6 martial brothers shouted at the same time. They teleported to mid-air and immediately stopped the purple shadow. Who knew that the purple shadow was like a shadow among the 7 of them? It had obviously stopped her, but it appeared behind her again. It kept chasing after Lao Qi like a shadow, slapping her face again and again. It was so loud that it sounded like a slap after slap. Not only were the people on the ground stunned, but the 7 people in the sky were even more shocked. Although the opponent's movement technique was similar to teleportation, teleportation consumed a lot of true essence, so it was impossible to use it so wantonly. Only deity transformation stage cultivators would be able to withstand such consumption, but ordinary deity transformation stage cultivators wouldn't dare to use it too much. Pa pa pa. The sound of slapping came from the air, one after another. After a total of 20 slaps, a purple shadow flashed among the 7 people and returned to Yu Qianqiu's side. Her pretty face was still cold. The people who were closer to her subconsciously took a step back. This woman was too terrifying. Yu Qianqiu smacked his lips and couldn't say anything. Wow, I picked up a treasure. Old man Bai has good taste. Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. He thought that he would be able to intimidate everyone by bringing 7 late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators. He didn't expect that he would be beaten up by a woman as soon as he appeared. 7 late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators. She fought as she pleased and no one could stop her. This. Wu Lixue looked at Ziyi dumbfounded. She had been with Ziyi for a few days and knew that Ziyi's cultivation was high, but she didn't expect it to be so powerful. No wonder her man brought her along every day. Thinking of this, Wu Lixue was a little discouraged. It seemed that she couldn't help Yu Qianqiu with her cultivation. Supporting Immortals Island 10,000 demons, and the people from other sects looked at Ziyi and Yu Qianqiu. They couldn't figure out how this guy got such a powerful woman by his side. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also obedient to him. The 7 people in the air were stunned. Old Seven's face was swollen like a pig's head, but he immediately used his power to reduce the swelling. The 7 people flashed back to Yan Zhuixing's side. Man Who stepped forward and stared at Ziyi. We are not as skilled as you, so we have nothing to say. May I ask if you used the great art of shifting position? Ziyi's cold expression changed slightly. She looked at Man Who in surprise. She didn't expect someone to recognize that she used the great art of shifting position, but she didn't reply. Yu Qianqiu also glanced at her. He remembered that when they were in the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, the handsome old man Nongzhu seemed to have told her to use the form displacement transposition art to escape. Seeing that she didn't speak, Man Who cupped his fists and said, "It must be the great art of shifting position. In this world, besides Mr. Nongzhu's great art of shifting position, there is no other movement technique that is so mysterious. May I know how to address you and Mr. Nongzhu?" Although the people present weren't the top experts of their respective sects, they still had extraordinary experience. However, they had never heard of the great art of form displacement transposition and Mr. Nongzhu mentioned by Man Who. They looked at Ziyi and Yu Qianqiu blankly. There was no time for them to interrupt. Ziyi's powerful appearance deprived them of the right to speak. Ziyi still didn't answer, but Man Who wasn't unhappy at all. He sized her up for a moment, then suddenly nodded and said, "Just now, I heard the famous Yu Qianqiu of the cultivation world call young ladies. Young lady is also wearing purple clothes, so it shouldn't be wrong. It is said that Mr. Nongzhu of the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea has a female disciple named Ziyi, and she likes to wear purple clothes. I think he is talking about you. You know my master?" Ziyi couldn't help but ask when she saw that he was speaking logically. However, this was also equivalent to telling everyone about her background. "So it really is Miss Ziyi." Man Who nodded and said with a smile, "Miss Ziyi has never asked about secular affairs. Why are you here? Is it possible that Mr. Nongzhu is also here? If he is really here, I hope you can introduce us to him. The 7 of us have heard of your name for a long time, and we look forward to meeting you." As he said this, he subconsciously looked around and the other 6 people did the same. All the sects muttered to themselves, "Who is this Mr. Nongzhu? These 7 people seem to be afraid of him. What kind of person can make 7 experts at the late stage of the crossing calamity stage afraid of him?" "He didn't come," Ziyi replied coldly. At first, she was a little worried that she had hit her master's friend, but now that she knew that these 7 people didn't know her master and only heard of him, her face became cold again. Hearing this, Man Who and the others seemed to be relieved. Chapter 374. Tut. It seemed that the handsome Nongzhu was quite famous in the soul-forming stage. Yu Qianqiu looked at their reactions and fell into deep thought. Man Who looked at Yu Qianqiu with a flicker in his eyes. He was afraid that it was not easy to make Nongzhu's disciple obey him. After thinking for a while, he took out another storage bag from his storage bag and handed it to Yu Qianqiu. He said, "My junior brother was reckless and destroyed the venue of the competition. Here are 10 million upper spiritual stones as compensation. I think you can let us participate in this saber drawing competition." Yu Qianqiu took the storage bag and used his divine sense to make a rough estimate. The number should be right. But it was a little difficult. Let them participate. The people of other sects might have objections and not let them participate. But he didn't want to return the 10 million upper spiritual stones to them. Alas, it was really a dilemma. Just as he was hesitating, Ziyi suddenly said, "You can only participate if you pay 10 million upper spiritual stones. If you don't have spiritual stones, you can leave." Her words were very rude, very powerful, and very straightforward. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu was so surprised that he almost couldn't close his mouth. He was ecstatic. When did this stubborn girl become so smart? She cooperated so well. In fact, this was all his own masterpiece. He had educated a simple woman who had never seen the world to think about money. He didn't know how Nongzhu would react if she knew. All the sects looked at each other. The deterrent force of Ziyi's action was still there, so no one stood up to object for the time being. Man Who was stunned. He really took out a bag of spiritual stones from his storage bag and handed it over. Ziyi took it and carefully confirmed the number. Then she nodded to Yu Qianqiu and gave it to him. Yu Qianqiu embarrassedly put the spiritual stones into his storage bag in front of everyone. He smiled awkwardly at Ziyi and said, "Since you said it's okay, let's continue the saber drawing competition." He looked at the crowd with a little guilty conscience. The people from the 4 great clans were speechless. They had casually told a lie and earned another 10 million. This kind of money was a little too easy. However, the people from the 4 great clans naturally wouldn't ruin his show, and all of them flashed back. Supporting Xian Island's Oci shook his head and sighed as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was such a good disciple in supporting Xian Island. How did it become like this? It seemed that it was really hard for a rogue cultivator to live in the cultivation world. Maybe he was afraid of being poor. Not to mention that he even took out such a treasure, he had almost reached the point where he couldn't move at the sight of money. Oci sighed and said, "Go back." More than a dozen people from supporting Immortal Island returned to their positions. With Fuxian Island taking the lead, the other sects could only reluctantly retreat. The place became empty again. Yu Qianqiu, we just handed over the spiritual stones, but we haven't started yet. How are we going to calculate it? Qiu Wuyuan shouted angrily. He and Dongfang Chang'ao hadn't entered the stage yet. Again. Yu Qianqiu have always been fair. Seniors, let's start the time again. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly gestured to Wu Liqing to get ready. He turned back and smiled at Yan Zhuixing and the others. Brother Yan, please do as you please. After the 2 seniors finish this round, you can just send 1 person to the stage. With another 20 million, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. He turned around and ran back to the stage. The 2 girls followed him. Yan Zhuixing looked at Wu Lishua's back with a complicated gaze. He turned around and led the 7 people to the entrance. There were already a lot of rogue cultivators at the entrance. They all looked at them with disgust. Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu turned a blind eye to them, but Man Hu's junior brothers were so angry that they gritted their teeth. Even though they were at the late stage of passing tribulation, they didn't have a seat here. If they were arrogant before, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now that they lost to Zi, it was suspicious that they were chased here. They were all masters at the late stage of passing tribulation, so it was hard for them to swallow their anger. Someone immediately transmitted his voice to Man Hu. Eldest senior brother, that Nongzhu is only at the mid-stage of spirit severing. Our master is at the late stage of spirit severing. Besides, this woman is only good at movement. If we really fight, we might be able to defeat her. Big senior brother, we came out this time to humiliate the Chinese cultivation world. Why are you so polite to her and humiliate us? Man Hu looked back at the tall and skinny man and transmitted his voice to him. Second brother, I'm not afraid of her. Her master, Nongzhu, is a good friend of Bai Changchun. In the whole cultivation world, only Nongzhu hasn't taken an oath. Among the spirit-severing cultivators, only Nongzhu can enter the Chinese cultivation world at any time to disturb us. Master once told me that Nongzhu is used to being lazy and doesn't like to meddle. Besides, he won't make a move because of the other spirit-severing cultivators. Master told us that if we meet him, we should try to be patient and not give him an excuse to make a move. Otherwise, we won't be able to defeat him no matter how many people we have. Z is his disciple. If we hurt his disciple, I'm afraid he will have a reason to make a move. That's easy. Master will kill Nongzhu himself. The tall and skinny man said disdainfully. You should know that 2 masters together are not Bai Changchun's match. Barbarian Tiger's words made the tall and thin man suddenly become silent. Although there was a big hole in the middle of the field, it didn't seem to affect the participants. Yu Qianqiu was also relieved. The 2 knives were stuck in the ground. After the accident, they weren't afraid that someone would steal them away. As soon as the timer started, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan used their earth energy to protect themselves. Immediately, everyone put aside the previous incident and focused their attention on the 2 of them. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. Under the telepathic connection, the 2 knives had already started to release their power before the 2 of them got close. Wong. The 2 knives seemed to have sensed that someone had ill intentions towards them. They made 2 sounds again. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan, who were closer, immediately felt a piercing chill in their hearts. What followed was a heart-palpitating aura of death. It was dense and oppressive, making them unable to resist and unable to get rid of it. The 2 of them were shocked. Only then did they realize that their earth energy protection couldn't withstand it. Yan Zhuixing, who was standing at the gate, was paying attention to the field. Just as the 2 knives made a sound, his pupils suddenly shrank. His eyes turned blood red in an instant and then disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on the field. No one noticed the abnormality in his eyes. Yan Zhuixing inadvertently discovered that the 2 blades actually glowed with an indistinct shadow. Like a wisp of smoke, it curled up and spread out, enveloping a radius of nearly 10 meters. It didn't disperse for a long time, and just happened to include Dongfang Changgao and Qiu Wuyuan within it. What surprised him the most was that he could feel an endless aura of death in the smoke-like shadow with just his eyes. After his demonic body was formed, although he hadn't officially cultivated the great skills in the demonic book, his demonic eye had already formed along with his demonic body. The smoke-like shadow seemed to be his demonic eye's archenemy. The moment it appeared, it stimulated his demonic eye and caused it to show itself. Then he forcefully suppressed it. Yan Zhuoxing didn't understand why this happened. He squinted his eyes slightly. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan didn't dare to hesitate. Otherwise, if the time was up, they would have given another 10 million to Yu Qianshou for nothing. The two of them looked at each other. Almost at the same time, they suppressed the spherical earth energy protection on their bodies. It was as if they were wearing a glowing coat. In a flash they appeared in front of the knives. With their strong willpower, they bit their tongues to resist the dizziness that would hit their nerves. 5 claws shrouded in earth energy reached out and grabbed the handle of the knives. The people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons couldn't sit still anymore. One by one they stood up and excitedly hoped that the two of them would succeed. The two of them actually wanted to use their speed to quickly pull the knives out. Naturally, Yu Qianshou wouldn't let them do as they wished. Otherwise, if the knives were gone, where would he get the knives from? Moreover, once the knives were taken away, it would be too far away and out of his control. He would be exposed immediately. He was afraid that the person who got the knives would immediately be killed by the sudden appearance of the black fire. At that time, if his swindling business was exposed, it would be really inconvenient for him to come out and meet people. Just as the two of them stretched out their claws, a thick black mist emerged from the blade with a whoosh. The protective vigor chi on their bodies immediately made a sizzling sound, almost directly breaking through their protective vigor chi. The two of them were shocked. At a glance, they could tell that this black fog was the same as the black demon that corroded Luo Qingtian's arm. Once it touched their bodies, it would be terrible. Frightened, they quickly retreated. The black fog curled up and spread in the air. The two knives became calm again, but everyone's eyes were focused on them. Many people from supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons sighed. They were so close to success, but they failed at the last moment. Was really a pity. Eldest senior brother, this knife can actually attack people on its own. This is impossible even for an ordinary spiritual treasure. Could it be that this knife is a high-grade spiritual treasure? The tall and thin man behind Manhu was shocked. It's very possible. Didn't they say that this item came from the Eastern Holy Land? Manhu said solemnly. The few of them suddenly became excited. Some people behind them suddenly snorted. The few of them just looked back coldly and didn't say anything. Their master was an expert in the late stage of the soul formation realm. He also had a few spiritual treasures, including a middle-grade one. The few of them had seen it before, but they had never seen a spiritual treasure that could attack automatically. They naturally put this item in the category of high-grade spiritual treasures. I didn't expect it. Eldest senior brother, we must find a way to get this treasure and offer it to master. Old Seven, who was beaten by purple dress, said excitedly. This knife is strange. Yan Zhuoxing turned around and pointed at his eyes. The few of them understood that he already had the devil eye and could see things that others couldn't. However, Yan Zhuoxing's cultivation wasn't at the stage where he could use voice transmission, so it wasn't convenient for him to ask in detail. Manhu nodded solemnly and said, spiritual treasures naturally have their own peculiarities. Otherwise they wouldn't be called spiritual treasures. Then he asked the few junior brothers, it seems that they won't be able to get this treasure. It's our turn to send people. Who's going? Chapter 375. I'll go, the lanky second brother said. Be careful. If you can't do it, come back. Don't force it. Manhu nodded and instructed. In the field, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan had already retracted their aura shield. Although the time was not up yet, the two of them felt that there was nothing they could do. If they forced themselves to draw the saber, they might even lose their lives. Each of them sighed and returned to their own tents in their own sections. On the stage, Yu Qianshou was trustworthy. He held the gong of alarm and stared at the hourglass below until it was completely empty. Only then did he ring the bell to announce the end of the competition. On the other side, the lanky second brother had already slowly entered the field. Yu Qianshou asked loudly, this round is short of one person. Who wants to go? He asked several times but no one answered. From everyone's expression, it was obvious that no one wanted to go with Yan Zhuoxing's people. Yu Qianshou suddenly felt a little depressed. However, he had no way to force others to go, so he could only announce the start of the competition. The second brother looked around with a trace of disdain on his face. However, he was immediately shocked by the bone-piercing chill coming from the saber. He did not dare to underestimate it and also released his aura shield. However, the aura shield could not stop the aura of death. The second brother immediately felt himself entangled in endless despair. His spirit became illusory, and he wanted to give up this meaningless resistance. His whole body was also swaying. Not good. There's something wrong with the second brother. The senior and junior brothers were shocked. Second brother? Man who saw that the situation was not right. He immediately shouted like a bolt from the blue. The second brother, who was immersed in the illusion, trembled and woke up. He thought, that was close. I was too careless. He steeled his mind and immediately walked toward the saber. With his cultivation, he was naturally much stronger than Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan in resisting the pressure coming from the saber. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu, who was on the stage, shouted, "The rules of the sword drawing competition have already been posted outside. Outsiders are not allowed to help in the sword drawing competition. If anyone dares to interfere, they will be declared a failure in accordance with the rules." Man who immediately cupped his hands and apologized, I'm sorry, I came in a hurry and didn't have time to look carefully, please forgive me." Then he turned around and shouted, "Old Seven, go and find the rules of the convention posted outside." Since they were able to come here, they were naturally aware of the rules of the competition. But it was a pity that the second brother had been too careless earlier, and as the eldest senior brother, Man who naturally couldn't help but remind him. Old Seven understood that eldest senior brother was looking for an excuse to step down, but when he turned around he found that no one behind him made way for him, so he could only teleport out. Second brother also heard these words. He knew that eldest senior brother had lost face in front of so many people because of him. His heart was filled with gratitude and he hardened his heart to pull the knife back. But as soon as he approached the knife, he also encountered the black demon that Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan had encountered before. The transparent protective aura shield flickered under the erosion of the black demon. Second brother was shocked. He didn't expect the black demon to be so powerful. No wonder the two people before retreated as soon as they encountered it. Man Hu and the others naturally saw that this was a sign of rapid consumption of Jinqi, and their hearts were in their throats. But this time, Man Hu learned his lesson and no longer shouted loudly. Instead, he transmitted his voice, "Second brother, if you can't do it, come back, don't force yourself." Second brother silently shook his head. He had made up his mind to pull out the knife. The experienced people of the various sects also saw that someone might be transmitting his voice to remind him of something. But this was a matter without evidence, and they couldn't say anything if they couldn't find any evidence. Relying on the profound cultivation of the final stage of the crossing tribulation, second brother's protective aura shield almost condensed into a solid form. It was as if he was wearing a glowing glove, and he unexpectedly grabbed the handle of the knife against the black demon. Yu Qianqiu's pupils shrank slightly, but he found that someone was staring at him instead of pulling out the knife. When he met that person's gaze, he saw that it was Yan Zhuixing who was staring at him. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded, but he snorted coldly in his heart. Wanting to pull out the knife like this is too easy. You're forcing me to kill you. Seeing that the knife was about to be pulled out by second brother, the faces of the various sects changed. If this was really the case, then the Chinese cultivation world would lose a lot of face. Although the other party's cultivation was at the final stage of the crossing tribulation, so many people couldn't fight against one person. Moreover, this was in their own territory. Wouldn't it be shameful? Especially the people of Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons, the leaders of the righteous and demonic sections. Their expressions were even more unsightly. They all regretted that they didn't let the consecrators of their sects personally take action. Just as second brother grabbed the knife handle, a raging black flame suddenly appeared on the body of the knife. In an instant, his entire body was wrapped inside, and the protective aura shield on his body was easily destroyed in an instant. Second brother, come back. Man Hu and the others no longer cared about the rules and shouted in alarm. Ah! Almost at the same time as they shouted, second brother had already flashed out of the black flame with a teleportation, but he still held his head and let out a mournful scream. For a cultivator at the final stage of the crossing tribulation to let out such a miserable scream, one could imagine the pain he was suffering. The people of the various sects all shivered in fear. Although second brother had flashed out of the black flame, he was like a piece of burning wood. The black flame stuck to his body and burned, and he couldn't get rid of it at all. Man Hu and the others flashed over, but they immediately didn't dare to get close to the terrifying power of the black flame. They could only shout and scream from afar as if they had gone crazy. The eyes of the senior and junior brothers were bloodshot as they watched second brother's skin and flesh disappear in the blink of an eye, turning into a skeleton. The skeleton swayed, and in the end even the skeleton collapsed and scattered on the ground. The black flame gradually died out, and a gust of wind blew past, and the scattered bones on the ground immediately withered and turned into flying ashes. The senior and junior brothers were dumbfounded as they looked at second brother's disappearing body. The people of the various sects were dumbfounded as they looked at the two knives. With such power, who could pull them out? Especially Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan. The two of them were extremely glad that they had retreated when they saw Black Fiend. If they had really grabbed the knife handle and activated the black flame, they were afraid that they would end up like this person in front of them. The two of them looked at each other silently across the stage. It's over. When Yu Qianqiu saw everyone's expression, he suddenly came to a realization and sighed in his heart. With such a commotion, who would dare to pull out the knives? No one would spend money to throw away their lives. The raging black flame on the knives gradually subsided, and they silently stood there as calm as before. But at this moment, everyone could only use two words to describe these two knives. Peerless murder weapons. Man Hu and his junior brothers were now left with 6 people, and they didn't even have the chance to collect second brother's corpse. 6 ferociously stared at Yu Qianqiu on the stage. The atmosphere was not good. Although in everyone's eyes Yu Qianqiu's character wasn't very good, he had just killed a foreign tribulation-passing realm expert, and gained face for the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, everyone stood up with a hua sound and coldly stared at Man Hu and the others, supporting Yu Qianqiu. The 6 clan elders of the 4 great clans also brazenly appeared on the stage, and stood on either side of Yu Qianqiu. Man Hu glanced at the 6 elders, and found that they were all at the late tribulation-passing realm. His eyes flickered. It wasn't that Man Hu was afraid of the 6 of them, but because of Ziyi who was standing beside Yu Qianqiu, he had some misgivings. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they would have dared to cause trouble wherever they went. Wuxia was speechless. Wherever this brat went, something would happen. They couldn't even guard against him, he was a jinx. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands towards Man Hu and the others and said, I deeply sympathize with what happened to my fellow disciples, but the saber drawing assembly has a rule. If any accidents occur, I will not be responsible. After saying that, he looked around and said, the next round will continue, that person who is interested can come up and pay spirit stones. Again, who will come? It's more like courting death. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianqiu. They didn't expect him to be greedy to this extent. In fact, Yu Qianqiu didn't have any hope, he was just saying it. What if there were people who wanted treasures more than their lives? Now that he had only obtained 60 million, he was a bit unwilling. Saying what if, there really was what if. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing slowly stepped forward and said, let me try. As he said that, he threw a storage pouch onto the stage. Yu Qianqiu caught the storage pouch and was stunned. Everyone looked at Yan Zhuixing. At this moment, everyone realized that Yan Zhuixing, who was originally at the core formation stage, was now at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. It had only been a few short years. However, a mocking expression appeared in everyone's eyes. Even someone at the late stage of the passing tribulation couldn't withstand it. Wasn't a nascent soul stage courting death? Man Hu stepped forward and stopped him and said solemnly, Young Hall Master, we appreciate your kind intentions, but please don't be impulsive. He thought that Yan Zhuixing couldn't swallow his anger because of his second brother's death. However, he didn't know that ever since Yan Zhuixing's demonic eyes were stimulated by the 2 sabers, he had a strong obsession in his heart. He wanted to compete with the 2 sabers, and the aura of death that made everyone's heart palpitate made him unable to suppress his passion. Yan Zhuixing said to Man Hu, State Preceptor, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Man Hu and the others looked at each other. They didn't know where Yan Zhuixing's confidence came from, but they also knew that Yan Zhuixing had a strong sense of autonomy. Once he decided on something, no one could change his mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to form the demonic body. *CK. My enemy. I can't wait for it. This is a good opportunity to kill you so that there won't be any trouble in the future. Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at the contents of the storage pouch and directly stuffed it into his own storage pouch. He waved at Wu Liqing below and said, Begin, begin. He was anxious to kill Yan Zhuixing. He could ignore the enmity between the two of them, but Yan Zhuixing wouldn't. Yan Zhuixing looked around and his eyes met with Yu Qianqiu again. The latter smiled and made a pleased gesture to him. Yan Zhuixing nodded, and no expression could be seen on his face. He directly walked towards one of the sabers. Before he got close, a bone-piercing chill suddenly attacked him. Yan Zhuixing stopped, closed his eyes, and opened his arms to welcome the aura of death that followed closely: indifference, ruthlessness, sternness, despair, and a series of extremely negative auras mixed together to form the aura of death. Yan Zhuixing slowly opened his eyes and turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. There was actually a smile on his face. However, Yu Qianqiu's expression changed. He could feel that the pressure released by the black fire not only had no effect on Yan Zhuixing, but it was all absorbed by Yan Zhuixing's body. Chapter 376. Those who had not personally experienced it might not know how powerful it was, but Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Weiyuan were shocked. Even with their cultivation, it was difficult for them to withstand such pressure, but Yan Zhuixing seemed to be completely fine. Although they had not personally experienced it, they also felt that something was wrong. Only now did Yan Zhuixing understand that his devil body could actually restrain the death aura emitted from the blade. After absorbing it into his body, his devil body showed faint signs of strengthening, which really surprised him. No wonder he had the urge to try it out. It seemed that these two blades were very suitable for him. Yan Zhuixing's gaze lingered on the two blades. Suddenly, he remembered that he had limited time and could not delay any longer, otherwise he would be cheated of spirit stones by that guy again. He walked to the front of the blades with ease. Just as he stretched out his hand, the black aura suddenly erupted from the blade, instantly submerging it in thick black smoke. There were no screams as everyone had imagined. Many people, including Yu Qianqiu, were a little disappointed. Surprisingly, the black aura that was as dense as a thick cloud gradually faded. When it faded a little more, the group of people were stunned when they saw the situation inside. They saw that Yan Zhuixing seemed to be enjoying it very much, like a whale drinking water, absorbing the black aura in big mouthfuls. Man Hu and the others also looked at each other. They knew that Yan Zhuixing had already formed the devil body, but they did not expect the devil body to have such power. In the future, if he really succeeded in cultivating the great technique of the Devil Book, how terrifying would that be? Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache watching this. You actually used my black aura as oxygen, damn. You have guts. Yan Zhuixing was so comfortable that he almost moaned. The black aura was more beneficial to the devil body than the death aura. He closed his eyes and was enjoying it, when he suddenly had a premonition that a terrible power was about to be released from the blade. Before he could react, there seemed to be some kind of power bursting out of his body. Yan Zhuixing believed that his devil body would not harm him, so he let it freely release. Before Yan Zhuixing could touch the blade, the surging black fire instantly erupted from the blade, and at that moment, a circle of black light appeared around Yan Zhuixing's body at the same time. The black fire that showed unparalleled power just now was actually unable to break through the black light. When the group saw this, they all gasped in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched even more. He did not expect Black Flame to have a nemesis, and the person who could restrain Black Flame was actually his enemy. What the hell? The black fire trapped the black light, while the black light protected Yan Zhuixing. The black fire and the black light neutralized each other. Just as they suppressed each other, they bounced up again. Yan Zhuixing, on the other hand, stood there with a cold face. His whole person looked evil and awe-inspiring. He glanced at the audience indifferently, as if the suppression of the black fire and black light had nothing to do with him. Anyone who came into contact with his eyes would subconsciously shiver in their hearts. No emotion could be seen in those eyes, and they were icy cold and indifferent to the extreme. It was as if he viewed all living beings as ants. That pair of cold eyes finally met with Yu Qianqiu's eyes. Yu Qianqiu's heart was pounding, but he still maintained a friendly smile on his face. Maybe Yu Qianqiu's smile moved Yan Zhuixing, but it was not the time to draw the blade yet. Yan Zhuixing silently turned around and walked out of the black fire. The evil and awe-inspiring black light also gradually retracted into his body. Oh my god. Is that still a human's gaze? After Yu Qianqiu got rid of Yan Zhuixing's gaze, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, this guy's evil aura is too heavy to actually be able to restrain my trump card. It seems like it's better not to provoke him for now. The people from the other sects were a little shocked. Yan Zhuixing was clearly fine, so why did he not want the treasure blade that was within his reach? Even Man Hu and the rest felt that it was a little strange. They looked at Yan Zhuixing, who was walking back with a questioning gaze. The latter said indifferently, let's go back. Go back now. Wouldn't second senior brother's death be in vain? Old Seven's gaze was still fixed on the blade. Yan Zhuixing shook his head slightly at Man Hu. Man who did not say much and shouted to the few people, "Listen to young palace lord, go back." As he spoke, he immediately released his flying artifact. After the few people jumped on it, they soared into the sky. Just like that, not only did one person die but they also lost 30 million upper-grade spirit stones. They came and left in a hurry, causing the people from the other sects to be a little puzzled. So, this business probably wouldn't be able to continue. Yu Qianqiu looked around the stage and shouted, "Is there anyone else trying?" After shouting a few times there was no response, so he added, "After 2 hours, if there is no one else trying, I will personally take back the 2 blades and end this saber-drawing conference." This was the last trace of hope that he was holding on to. Even Ziyi was looking around, hoping that someone would come out and pay. However, before 2 hours were up, the sects started to leave. With one sect taking the lead, the other sects also left one after another. There was no other way. Although the blades were good, they could not take them away. Many of the people who originally wanted to take advantage of Yu Qianqiu being alone to snatch the saber gave up on this idea. This saber could actively attack people. Even if they killed Yu Qianqiu, they still wouldn't be able to take the saber away. Almost all the sects had left. Only Fuxian Island, 10,000 Demons and Moon Clan, which were closer to the front, did not leave. Yu Qianqiu swore some vulgarities that others could not hear clearly. He tore off the big red flower and the red cloth on his body. After seeing the 3 sects, he was slightly stunned. Fuxian Island and 10,000 Demons still had a reason to stay. What were the women from Moon Clan doing here? Did they admire me so much? Earning 70 million in a day was also worth admiring? Bullsh*T. He jumped off the stage and took back the 2 blades that he used to trick people. He called Ziyi and Wu Lixue and left. The Wu clan would naturally arrange for people to clean up the mess. Yu Qianqiu. 2 old men's voices and a woman's voice called out at the same time. Were they really looking for me? Yu Qianqiu stopped and turned around. He asked confusedly, "Seniors, why are you looking for me?" Needless to say, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan were acquaintances. The woman from Moon Clan was called Hua Rui. Although he was not familiar with her, he knew her. When he went to the demon region to train, she was the leader of Moon Clan. After the 3 shouted, they looked at each other. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan had been entangled for many years. They could almost read each other's minds. They knew what each other wanted to do with just one look. The 2 old men looked at Hua Rui suspiciously. They really could not figure out what she wanted to do. The 3 first cupped their hands at the people from the 4 clans on the stage. Then they led their disciples and walked toward Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue greeted them. Ziyi, on the other hand, stood there without moving. Indeed, with her cultivation and background, she did not need these people at all. The people from the 3 clans surrounded the 3 of them, but they did not say anything. Yu Qianqiu looked left and right. He did not understand what the 3 of them wanted. He thought to himself, "Are they going to let me do something because I made some money?" With the wealth of these 3 clans, they did not need to collect protection fees. In the end, it was Qiu Wuyuan who said cheerfully, "Brother Yu, I would like to invite you to 10,000 Demons as a guest. Would you like to do me the honor?" "Ah, Senior Qiu, you are too polite." Yu Qianqiu replied, but he immediately thought of what Qiu Wuyuan said about buying a knife. It probably had something to do with this. Just as he did not know how to reject, he suddenly saw Hua Rui staring at Ziyi. He quickly took the opportunity to ask Qiu Wuyuan, "Senior Hua, do you know Ziyi?" Qiu Wuyuan's face twitched and he cursed the little fox in his heart. Hua Rui came back to her senses and smiled. "No, I don't." Her eyes were still staring at Ziyi from time to time. "Senior Hua, why are you looking for me?" Yu Qianqiu was confused. Nothing. As soon as Hua Rui said that, she stunned herself. Why did she stop him for no reason? She immediately changed her words and said, "Nothing important. On behalf of the Moon Clan, I would like to invite you to visit the Moon Clan." As soon as she said that, Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan were both stunned. The Moon Clan was made up of women and they never invited men casually. Even if they did invite men occasionally, they would only invite people of high moral standing in the cultivation world. Why would they invite someone with bad character like Yu Qianqiu? The 2 of them looked at each other and thought to themselves, something's wrong. Yu Qianqiu naturally would not suspect that he was a bad person. However, he had also heard that the Moon Clan was not a place where men could go casually. He was stunned and said, Yu Qianqiu would not dare to reject Senior Hua's invitation. However, Yu Qianqiu is a man. It might be inconvenient for me to go. Bring your female companion with you. Of course there won't be a problem. Hua Rui smiled and pointed at Ziyi. Dongfang Chang'ao and Qiu Wuyuan were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that the person the Moon Clan invited wasn't Yu Qianqiu, but this mysterious woman. However, they were not familiar with this woman, so they used Yu Qianqiu as an excuse. Yu Qianqiu understood what she meant. It seemed that she was targeting Ziyi. He couldn't help but look at Ziyi a few more times. However, Ziyi stared at Huarui and said, "We can go. How many spiritual stones can you take out?" Everyone instantly fell silent. Very quiet, Yu Qianqiu's face twitched again and again. This girl is even more shameless than me. Someone invited you as a guest and you want them to pay? This logic was unprecedented. He was also struck speechless by the lightning. How many spiritual stones do you need? Huarui asked with a stiff face. Is 20 million enough? Ziyi asked Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth wide. He felt a little dazed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister. Even if you want to get money, you have to look at the occasion. Even if you want to embarrass yourself, you don't have to do it like this. Even if you want to, don't do it now. He didn't speak and Ziyi thought he agreed. She turned around and said, 20 million. She didn't forget to add to Huarui, 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Yu Qianqiu couldn't afford to be embarrassed. He was afraid that she would say something else. He hurriedly bowed to Dongfang Chang'ao and said, "Senior Dongfang, why are you looking for me?" Dongfang Chang'ao, who was staring at Ziyi in a daze, came back to his senses. His expression became solemn again. He said, "Yu Qianqiu, follow me back to supporting Xian Island. I have something to discuss with you." Yu Qianqiu had a faint smile on his face. "I'm no longer a disciple of supporting Xian Island. Why are you still talking to me like this? It's as if I have to go." He immediately shook his head and said, "Let's discuss it here. There's no need to go to supporting Xian Island." Yu Qianqiu, what's wrong with supporting Xian Island? Why are you avoiding it like this? Sihai came out from behind and shouted. Logically speaking, Dongfang Chang'ao was still under his control. However, when it came to handling outside matters, Dongfang Chang'ao was better at it. Therefore he didn't say anything. But now, he couldn't help it because he was one of the people who wanted to recall Yu Qianqiu back to supporting Xian Island. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and didn't say anything. Sihai snorted coldly, waved his hand and walked away. Dongfang Chang'ao frowned and said, "Yu Qianqiu, Aunt Jiu asked me to find you. She wants you to go back to supporting Xian Island. Are you going?" Yu Qianqiu still shook his head and said, "Senior Dongfang, please send my regards to Aunt Jiu. If there's a chance, I'll definitely pay her a visit." Dongfang Chang'ao let out a deep breath and said, "Aunt Jiu asked me to ask you if you still remember a promise you made in the past. If you remember, you have to go back to supporting Xian Island. Aunt Jiu wants you to fulfill your promise." Chapter 377. The flying artifact broke through the sky and flew towards the East Sea. Only 7 of the 8 people were left. Their faces were gloomy and looked out of place with the white clouds outside. "Big brother, those people are still following us. Let me go and kill them." Old 7 looked at the 3 flying artifacts and said angrily. When they came from the East Sea, the people from the Cultivation Alliance immediately followed them. Now that they returned, they were still following them. It seemed that they would not stop monitoring them until they returned to the East Sea. Now is not the time to provoke conflict. The cultivators of the various countries are gathering people. After a large number of people arrive, we will settle the score with them. Second brother's death must be avenged. Man whose face was pale. He was gritting his teeth when he suddenly found that Yan Zhuixing was on the verge of falling. It seemed that he could not stand stably. He immediately supported him and asked, "Young Palace Master, are you injured?" They looked at him in surprise. Was the calmness from before just an act? Yan Zhuixing looked back at the flying artifact that was following them from afar. Just as he turned his head, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale. What made Man Hu and the others shocked was that when the blood Yan Zhuixing spat out fell on the bottom of the flying artifact, it actually emitted black smoke and quickly dried up into a scab. "Were you injured by the saber?" Man Hu asked. "My demonic body seems to be able to restrain that saber. However, my demonic body has just formed and is not stable yet. When I was defending, I was accidentally invaded by the fire poison. Fortunately, the demonic body suppressed the fire poison and did not spread." Yan Zhuixing's face was pale as he said, "After going back, I will speed up the cultivation of the demonic book. I must get those 2 sabers." After half a day, they successfully returned to the Everlasting Island. Yan Zhuixing did not say much and directly flew into the depths of the mountains on the island. The senior and junior brothers looked at each other in the sky. They knew that he went to cultivate the demonic technique. Man Hu and the others thought of the shocking technique in the demonic book and felt a chill in their hearts. Old Third, who had been silent all this time, asked, "Big brother, this demonic book is a treasure that Master has kept for many years. Why did you say that you accidentally found it in the inner palace? Also, although Master told us to look for people who can build a devil body, why did you give the devil book to him to cultivate? If Master investigates this matter, I'm afraid." Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and revealed a satisfied smile. These junior brothers clearly knew that what he did was inappropriate, but they didn't say anything. This trust was very precious. But thinking of the dead second brother, Man Hu said with some sadness, "Third brother, Master treated us like his own father. How could I do such a thing behind Master's back?" So, when Master found out that Yan Zhuixing had formed the devil body, he was so happy that he almost came to China in person. However, he was bound by the poison oath, so he had no choice but to accept my will and pass the devil's book to Yan Zhuixing, and let us listen to Yan Zhuixing's commands. This. The others were speechless. Although they didn't say it out loud, their expressions were filled with doubt. There are some things that you guys don't know. However, now that Yan Zhuixing has formed his demonic body, it's time for me to tell you guys. Man Hu looked at his junior brothers and slowly said, "The ancient devil path is true, and the passage to the devil world is also true. This is because the devil path was too powerful in the past, even the immortal and netherworld had to bow down to them. Who would have thought that such a powerful devil path would be provoked by the immortal and netherworld? As for what happened, even Master doesn't know. In short, the passage to the devil world was sealed by the immortal and netherworld. But the devil monarch of the devil world was also not an ordinary person. After discovering that something was wrong when the passage was about to be sealed, he forcefully used a great technique to capture a devil path pawn and send him out. The pawn that was sent out had the devil's book, bestowed by the devil monarch. The others looked at each other in dismay. Third brother frowned and said, "Eldest brother, did Master tell you this? Why didn't Master tell us?" Third brother, listen to me slowly, you will naturally understand after listening. Man Hu continued, "Since the immortal and netherworld dared to do this, they naturally wouldn't let the people of the devil world have the opportunity to open the passage from the inside. The devil path pawn carried the devil's book, and was entrusted by the devil monarch to look for people in the mortal world who could successfully cultivate the devil's book. Once someone could successfully cultivate the devil's book, they would naturally be able to find the sealed passage to the devil world. With the power of the devil's book, there would definitely be an opportunity to open the passage from the outside. Since that is the case, why didn't the devil path pawn cultivate the devil's book himself, but instead looked for people to cultivate it?" Fourth brother was puzzled. "If you want to cultivate the devil's book, you must first build the devil's body." Man Hu sighed. At that time the situation was urgent, and the devil monarch didn't have time to choose a more suitable candidate. He had no choice but to send the devil's path pawn. But the devil's path pawn's talent was limited, and he was unable to build the devil's body, so how could he cultivate the devil's book? After the immortal and netherworld joined hands to seal the passage, they wantonly slaughtered the remaining devil path people in the mortal world. And at that time, without the support of the devil world, how could the devil's path people be a match for the immortal and netherworld? Almost all of them were killed, and from then on the devil's path became extinct. That devil's path pawn, who was entrusted with the heavy responsibility, endured humiliation and went through untold hardships to survive. After the immortal and netherworld stopped paying attention to the mortal world, he quietly looked for people who could build the devil's body and cultivate the devil's book. Seventh brother, who was a bit hot-tempered, was stunned. Then how did the devil's book fall into the hands of Master? Seventh brother didn't understand, but the others thoughtfully looked at each other and seemed to have understood something. Man Hu looked at them and explained with a smile, that devil's path pawn's cultivation hasn't reached the stage of immortality, and it's also impossible for him to live from ancient times until now. He was entrusted with the heavy responsibility of the Devil King, so he naturally had to find someone to succeed him. Before he died, he found a successor, and at the price of never being able to reincarnate and having his soul scattered, he used the Devil's Curse of the Devil's Path secret technique on the successor. If the successor doesn't fulfill his last wish, he must find a suitable successor to continue, otherwise he will face the punishment of the Devil's Curse, and at that time he will neither live nor die. And that Devil's Curse will also be passed down from generation to generation. Seventh brother was stunned. He wasn't a fool and roughly understood what was going on. He couldn't help but ask, "Eldest senior brother, do you mean that Master is the successor of this generation who has been entrusted with a heavy responsibility? Then wouldn't Master also have that devil's curse planted on him?" "That's right." Man who solemnly said, "I have already promised to inherit Master's heavy responsibility. If Master is gone, the devil's curse will automatically descend on me." Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they all looked at their eldest senior brother in a daze. Man who waved his hand and said with a smile, "However, this matter is really unexpected. At that time I saw that Yan Zhuixing's will was firm, so I had the idea of letting him try to build a devil's body. I really didn't expect that after countless years of failure, he would actually succeed. I have to say that it is a coincidence. Since it has been successful, then is the devil's curse on Master already broken?" Fifth brother asked. Man who shook his head with a wry smile, "How could it be so easy? There are only two ways to break the devil's curse. First, after the devil world's passage is opened, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Second, after the devil book Cultivator reaches the late Devil King stage, he can use a great method to help the successor build a devil's body. Once the successor's devil's body is formed, the devil's curse will naturally disappear. Of course, when the Devil King uses a great method to help the successor build a devil's body, it is almost impossible to fail. Unlike when we use the 7-star blood-piercing great method, it is almost impossible to survive. In that case, Yan Zhuixing needs to smoothly cultivate to the late Devil King stage to be able to break the devil's curse on Master. Sixth brother asked. That's right. Therefore, Master wants us to listen to Yan Zhuixing's command. The purpose is to help him eliminate the interference and smoothly cultivate the devil book. Man who said suddenly looked at everyone and sighed, "It's just that if it's like this, junior brothers will have to suffer. This matter originally has nothing to do with you. Eldest senior brother, please don't say that Master and we are like father and son. It is our duty to serve Master. How can there be any grievances?" Third brother stopped him. The others also said similar words. Man who tightly pursed his lips, looked at his junior brothers and nodded with gratification. The third brother frowned and said, "Eldest senior brother, there's a troublesome matter. If we want to avenge second senior brother, we naturally have to kill the Yuchencho. However, Nongzhu's female disciple has always been by his side. Seeing how she listens to Yuchencho's words, once we make a move, Nongzhu's disciple will definitely help. Although we are not afraid of her, if Nongzhu is involved, then it will be troublesome. Second brother, we can't die in vain. I will immediately send a message to Master. I believe that after Master knows of second brother's death, he will clear the obstacles for us to take revenge. Master will definitely personally go to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest to negotiate with Nongzhu." Man whose eyes flickered. After saying that, he flashed to the peak of a mountain, took out a piece of jade, found the direction, and muttered softly, "In the distant Di-Rong Empire, a snow-capped mountain towered into the clouds. The cold wind whistled under the gloomy clouds and snowflakes fluttered in the air. There was not a trace of green, nor a trace of life. Above the gloomy clouds, on the peak of the snow-capped mountain, the sun was shining brightly. The mountain was covered with a layer of ice, and under the sunlight, the mountain was draped in 7 colors. In such a deserted place, there was an old man with white hair and beard sitting cross-legged on the ice peak, his body only wrapped in a thin snow-white robe. He was not afraid of the cold. Next to him, there was a snow-white python, curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. The strangest thing was that there was a pair of sparkling and translucent horns on the snake's head. If a knowledgeable person saw this, they would know that this was a rare spirit beast, snow flood dragon. At this time, the old man who was sitting cross-legged like a sculpture suddenly opened his eyes. He was silent for a moment, then as if he had heard some unfortunate news, his eyes suddenly widened, his eyes flickered, and he suddenly stood up. A huge imposing aura surged out from his body. The sleeping snow flood dragon quickly opened its eyes and raised its head, its bright red eyes blinking, revealing a frightened expression. Its coiled body brought along a white shadow, and like a divine dragon, it quickly drilled into the sea of clouds, disappearing without a trace. Ah! The old man suddenly let out a painful howl, and a majestic aura surged out like a gas. The entire mountain peak immediately felt as if a strong earthquake had occurred. The ice covering it collapsed with a loud rumble and slid down the mountain. The thick gloomy clouds that floated over the mountainside, with the mountain peak as the center, stirred up undulating waves, and dispersed in all directions. The imposing aura was truly astonishing. The old man suddenly swung his arms, and his whole body rapidly broke through the sky, bringing with it a sharp whistle of friction with the air, and disappeared into the distant sky in the blink of an eye. Chapter 378. Fuxian Island, the place that Yu Qianqiu hadn't been to for a long time. When Dongfang Chang'ao said that Ma Jiugu wanted him to fulfill his promise, he knew that he had to come, and it was hard for him to refuse. He might feel that he didn't know anyone from Fuxian Island, but Ma Jiugu was an exception. Back then he couldn't bear the torment of time anymore, so he knelt down to Ma Jiugu in exchange for a starting point, but it also made him bear a promise that he had to repay. Yu Qianqiu didn't deny that he could go back on his word, but for a man like him there was a difference. If he didn't return it he wouldn't return it, but if he had to return it he couldn't avoid it. What was the difference? Look at your conscience, there was no reason. Dongfang Chang'ao drove a flying artifact and brought Yu Qianqiu, Ziyi and a group of people from Fuxian Island back. On the way, Osihai was still panting with anger, but Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to pay attention to him. This kind of guy was used to being flattered at home and he lacked stimulation. Ziyi silently stayed by Yu Qianqiu's side. She discovered that Yu Qianqiu's expression was somewhat absent-minded. She didn't know what he was thinking about. This was the first time she had seen such a thing happen to Yu Qianqiu. Fuxian Island had already received the news in advance that Yu Qianqiu was coming back. No one knew who leaked the news, but some of the younger generation disciples immediately spread the news around the island. The expelled Yu Qianqiu is coming back. The An Kuangsung Yu Qianqiu that even ancestor Qing Fu couldn't catch is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who saved the disciples of various sects in the demon ghost domain is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who defeated a competitor in the cultivation pavilion is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who created the star flame fire technique is coming back. The Yu Qianqiu who killed the grandson of sect master An Kuangsung and the son of Daluo sect master's coming back. I heard that Daluo sect master Luo Qingtian was also defeated by Yu Qianqiu and lost an arm. Who doesn't know about this? The saber drawing assembly, this time is hosted by Yu Qianqiu. There were even a few female disciples hiding in their rooms discussing with stars in their eyes. The first girl exclaimed, "Really? Senior Yu Qianqiu who cultivates the Guiyuan sword technique, is coming back? I don't know if I have the chance to come into contact with him. I've been cultivating the Guiyuan sword technique for such a long time, but I always feel that I can't unleash its power. I really want to ask him for some pointers." The second girl said with disdain, "I also want him to give me pointers. But he is no longer a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. Why should he give us pointers? I heard that he is a guest invited by supporting Immortal Island." The third girl said with regret, "Senior Yu Qianqiu is the person I admire the most. He didn't do anything wrong to supporting Immortal Island, so why did the sect expel him? Now, with his ability, he is still famous in the cultivation world without the support of the world's #1 sect." Ding Girl rubbed her chin and said, "You are not the only one who admires Senior Yu Qianqiu. Who in our supporting Immortal Island doesn't admire him? So, how many years does it take for such a person to appear in supporting Immortal Island? But he was chased away by the sect. I suspect that someone is jealous of his talent and is purposely making things difficult for him." Yes. The few girls nodded and agreed with what Ding Girl said. The higher-ups of supporting Immortal Island heard similar discussions from the young disciples everywhere they went. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These young people all remembered Yu Qianqiu's good points, but consciously didn't accept their idol's shortcomings. It seemed that Yu Qianqiu's reputation as a scum of the cultivation world, and a madman, was very famous. Didn't they hear of it? However, it was understandable. Yu Qianqiu didn't look very old, but he had done many things that young people wanted to do but couldn't. Furthermore, any of the things he did could make the young people with dreams famous. What's more, he did so many things on one person. Actually, let alone the young people, how many of the older generation didn't secretly admire him? Otherwise they wouldn't have called back Yu Qianqiu this time. If Yu Qianqiu heard these discussions, it was unknown what he would think. Presumably he would also sigh. After so many years, he rarely stopped to rest and had always been bouncing around tirelessly. He actually did so many things and it could be said that his hard work wasn't in vain. Actually, he didn't only do these things in the open and in the dark. A man who didn't know tiredness could also do some things. When they arrived at supporting Immortal Island, Ziyi sized it up curiously. She had also heard of this world's #1 sect. Yu Qianqiu looked at the island below expressionlessly. The thick fog on the island opened up a path. The flying immortal treasure went through and directly flew to the square in front of Penglai Pavilion and landed. On the peak of the Alchemy Pavilion, Guan Weiwu threw off his image of an alchemy addict. He stood in front of the cliff of the alchemy pavilion and watched the flying immortal treasure land with his own eyes. He sighed softly and said, "Is he back? Won't you know if you go and see for yourself? After all, they are master and disciple. I don't think Yu Qianqiu is a heartless person." Yang Qian, who was standing beside him, laughed. Yang Qian also didn't expect that the kid who liked to wander around in the past would actually make such a big name in the cultivation world. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Sigh. He can't blame others. I, as his master, have never given him anything or taught him anything. Even when he was about to be expelled from the sect, I didn't stand out to protect him. Guan Weiwu looked in the direction of Penglai Pavilion and laughed bitterly. Cutting off ties. I, as his master, have hurt his heart. It's fine if I don't go. In front of Penglai Pavilion, Yu Qianqiu looked around and was instantly shocked. He could see supporting Immortal Island disciples everywhere. When he was in supporting Immortal Island, he had never seen so many disciples loitering around Penglai Pavilion. Could it be that supporting Immortal Island secretly recruited many disciples? But why didn't he hear 100 Charm Beauty mention it before? Yu Qianqiu looked around suspiciously. It seemed that all the people walking around were staring at him. Something was wrong. As he thought of this, he also became vigilant. Zi nodded secretly. The world's #1 sect was indeed the world's #1 sect. Just by looking around, there were actually so many low-level disciples. Let's go. The sect leader and the others are waiting for you in Penglai Pavilion. Dongfang Chang'ao said as he put away his flying immortal treasure. Osihai had already gone in without saying a word. Is Anjio here too? Yu Qianqiu asked. Dongfang Chang'ao looked up at Penglai Pavilion and said, Anjio should be here too. Let's go up and wait. Yu Qianqiu also looked up and said with an expressionless face, How would I dare to trouble Anjio? I'd better go to Mulberry Garden and pay my respects to her personally. Elder Dongfang, please inform her first so that there won't be any misunderstandings. With that said, he unsheathed the long sword on his back and flew towards Mulberry Garden. Zi also followed. Dongfang Chang'ao was stunned and immediately understood that he didn't want to meet the sect leader and the others. He looked up and saw that Feng Xiangtian had already appeared in front of the window with a gloomy face. This brat didn't give me any face at all. Dongfang Chang'ao shook his head helplessly and sent a message in the direction of Mulberry Garden. He then entered Penglai Pavilion. The disciples near Penglai Pavilion were slowly walking in the direction of Mulberry Garden as if nothing had happened. Mulberry Garden was still lush and lush. In the inner garden, Lan Bingxue had already helped Ma Jiao to stand in the courtyard. Yu Qianqiu and Zi landed in the outer garden. To show respect to Ma Jiao, the two ignored the gazes of others and directly walked into the inner garden. As soon as he saw Ma Jiao, Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu greets Anjio. After getting up, he didn't even look at Lan Bingxue. He didn't even think about putting on an act towards this woman who had hurt his woman. Sooner or later he would settle the score with her. Lan Bingxue's expression slightly changed. Ma Jiao nodded and smiled, It's good that you came. Then she looked at Ziyi and asked, You must be Miss Ziyi? With this question, it seemed that Ziyi's performance in the saber drawing assembly had made her famous in the world. Ziyi didn't speak. No matter how high Ma Jiao's seniority was, it couldn't be higher than her. Yu Qianqiu quickly replied respectfully, Aunt Jiao, she is indeed Ziyi. Ma Jiao didn't mind. She looked at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, This old woman won't talk nonsense, lest you youngsters talk too much to me. Yu Qianqiu, that year in this garden you owed this old woman a promise. Today this old woman summoned you to fulfill this promise. Are you willing? Elder Dongfang has already informed me. Since this junior has come, ninth aunt, please do not hesitate to instruct me. As long as this junior is able to do it, I will definitely do my best to accomplish it, Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. Good. This old woman didn't misjudge you. You are indeed a trustworthy and responsible man. Ma Jiao nodded and said with a smile, What I want you to do is very simple. This old woman wants you to rejoin supporting Immortal Island. This. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. When he came here he had thought of the worst and even made all sorts of plans. He didn't expect that he would rejoin supporting Immortal Island. Ziyi also looked at Yu Qianqiu in a daze. How was it possible for Senior Bai's disciple to rejoin supporting Immortal Island? What? Is this request making things difficult for you? Ma Jiao thought that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed and said with a smile, Let bygones be bygones. Don't take it to heart. If anyone dares to gossip, This old woman will be the first to deal with him. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, Aunt Jiu, it's not that I don't want to agree, but this junior can't. I already have a master, so how can I join supporting Immortal Island? Ziyi also nodded and said, yes, he can't join supporting Immortal Island. If he does that and offends his master, I'm afraid that supporting Immortal Island will disappear from the cultivation world. Ma Jiu looked at Lan Bingxue speechlessly. She wasn't speechless because of Yu Qianqiu's rejection, but because of Ziyi's arrogant tone. If someone else had said this, Ma Jiu would have treated it as nonsense. However, it was different when Ziyi said it. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Ziyi could easily deal with 7 experts at the late stage of the crossing tribulation stage. There was also her mysterious master, Mr. Nongzhu, and the unheard-of South Sea purple bamboo forest. Everything indicated that Ziyi's background wasn't simple. Now that she said such words, the so-called master of Yu Qianqiu might really be someone that supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend. Yu Qianqiu, can you tell this old woman who your master is? Ma Jiu asked. This. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and said slowly, although you haven't met my master, when we were training in the demon domain, my master injured you and the seniors of supporting Immortal Island. What? He's your master? Ma Jiugu shuddered when she heard this. The terrifying scene from back then was still deeply engraved in her mind. A thunderous and sonorous divine sense had instantly injured a group of people. That person's cultivation was unimaginable. That person was an invincible existence. Chapter 379. Anjiu, please keep this secret for me. Yu Qianqiu bowed and said, Anjiu, is there anything else you want me to do? As long as it's within my capabilities, I will do my best. Ma Jiu looked at him with a complicated expression. She didn't expect him to find such a powerful backer. No wonder he dared to be so unscrupulous in the cultivation world. She shook her head and said, I can't think of anything for the time being. Stay on supporting Immortal Island for a day and I'll let you know when I think of something. Yu Qianqiu hesitated for a moment before he said, I would like to do something to offset the promise I made back then. I wonder if you and Jiu would agree? This promise was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. He really wanted to resolve this matter as soon as possible. Otherwise, others might use it against him in the future. Oh, what is it? Ma Jiu's eyes lit up. Why don't you tell me? If I help you, Anjiu, increase your lifespan by another 150 years, I wonder if I can cancel out this promise? Yu Qianqiu slowly said. When these words were spoken, everyone was greatly shocked. Could he, Yu Qianqiu, really do something as heaven-defying as allowing someone to live for another 150 years for no reason? Even Ziyi looked at him with a face full of shock. Ma Jiu's chest heaved up and down and her breathing became rapid. She didn't have much time left to live. What kind of concept would it be if she could live for another 150 years? Perhaps she would have a chance to break through to that legendary realm. After calming down, her eyes flickered and she said, I won't use your promise to tie you down for the rest of your life. Rest for a day and let me think about it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. In that case, I'll take my leave. Yu Qianqiu bowed and left the mulberry garden with Ziyi. After watching the two leave, Lan Bingxue turned her head and said, Aunt Jiu, why didn't you agree to him? If he can really extend your lifespan by another 150 years, it will be a great thing. 150 years of lifespan? Ma Jiugu murmured with a confused expression. Lan Bingxue stayed silent with her for a while, then suddenly asked in a low voice, Aunt Jiu, who is Yu Qianqiu's master? When she was supporting Ma Jiugu just now, when Yu Qianqiu mentioned the origin of his master, Ma Jiugu's body trembled. She could clearly feel it. She really wanted to know who could make Ma Jiugu so shocked. I've fought him, but I've never met him. Ma Jiugu gave a simple reply. Although she kept Lan Bingxue by her side, she wouldn't let Lan Bingxue know about some matters that involved the core of the sect. She didn't know why. Lan Bingxue lowered her head and stopped asking. Knowing that Ma Jiugu would give him an answer tomorrow, Yu Qianqiu instantly felt relieved. It was better to settle this matter earlier than later. Now that he was in a good mood, he led Ziyi out of the mulberry garden, letting Ziyi appreciate the 10,000 fragrance garden that was full of spirit grasses. Are these all spirit grasses? Ziyi's pretty face melted. Smelling the fragrance, looking at the grass, vines, flowers, and willows all over the mountains and fields, her face bloomed with innocent curiosity. Compared to the monotonous purple bamboo forest, the scenery here was much more vivid and lively. Yes, they are all spirit grasses. Yu Qianqiu nodded his head. In his heart he thought, this is nothing. If there is a chance, I will let you go to my territory and see what is called the most complete variety of spirit grasses. Now that he was in the 10,000 fragrance garden, he naturally had to go to the main hall, where his woman was. At the entrance of the main hall, Fernan and Furong had been waiting for a long time. There was no one around, so it seemed that they had been asked to leave. The expressionless former came back from Penglai Pavilion. He was originally with the head and the others, but who knew that Yu Qianzhou did not give face to the head of the #1 sect in the world and went directly to see Ma Jiugu. Fernan had to go back to the 10,000 fragrance garden to wait for Yu Qianzhou. He had already decided in his heart that if Yu Qianzhou did not come to the 10,000 fragrance garden to see him after he came to the mulberry garden, he would carefully consider the relationship between this guy and his daughter. Furong's face was full of joy. Fernan was afraid that his daughter would be too happy and be seen by others about Yu Qianzhou's return, so he specially blocked the news from her. It was not until just now that he told her, and he also gave her a lot of instructions. Senior Fei. Yu Qianzhou saluted awkwardly. Since he was caught in bed last time, he felt that the 3 words Senior Fei were not smooth no matter how he called him. Hearing this, Fernan also had a strange expression. He nodded slightly and his eyes fell on Ziyi. Furong called out cheerfully, Yu Qianzhou. Her voice was still so pleasant to hear. Yu Qianzhou smiled at her. In public it was not good to show too much affection. Come in and talk. After Fernan finished speaking, he was just about to turn around, but his body stopped, and he looked at the outside of Myriad Fragrance Garden with a twitching expression. Several people also looked over and Yu Qianzhou was also stunned. He saw that in the forest outside Myriad Fragrance Garden, there were flying swords flying everywhere, and there were probably no less than thousands of them. Damn. What are they doing? Yu Qianzhou looked at Fernan suspiciously. Fernan said in a deep voice, you will know when you go out and take a look. He naturally had to listen to his future father-in-law's words. Yu Qianzhou immediately turned around and walked out of Myriad Fragrance Garden, and Ziyi followed him. He wouldn't know if he didn't look, but he was shocked when he saw that there were probably no less than 400 to 500 people, and all of them were controlling the swords. Some were controlling 2 or 3 swords, and some were controlling more than 10 swords at the same time. No wonder there were so many flying swords flying everywhere. Yu Qianzhou said blankly, Guiyuan sword technique? Since when did this place become a training ground? Since when did Guiyuan sword technique become popular on Fuxian Island? As soon as Yu Qianzhou appeared, the flying swords flying everywhere were all collected, and hundreds of excited eyes stared at him. Someone took the lead and shouted, Greetings, Senior Yu Qianzhou. Then it was a mess and cheers came one after another. Everyone gathered around as well. Fernan, who was in front of the main hall, shook his head and smiled bitterly, but Furong's face was full of pride for her man. You all know me? Yu Qianzhou pointed at himself and asked in shock. He thought to himself, why don't I know any of you? Everyone shook their heads and nodded, and their eyes were burning. This is the legendary idol. Yu Qianzhou was confused and he looked at Purple Dress, but it seemed like Purple Dress also didn't understand why these people shook their heads and nodded. At this moment, a disciple plucked up his courage and came over to greet. We are the younger generation disciples of Fuxian Island, and we have long heard of Senior's great name. I heard that Senior is cultivating Guiyuan sword technique, and we are the same, but it is difficult for us to unleash the power of Senior, so we specially rushed over to meet Senior, hoping that Senior can give us pointers. Fans. Yu Qianzhou looked at everyone's burning eyes, and 2 words suddenly popped up in his head. Looking at these people again, some were hugging a few swords and some were hugging a large pile of swords. This Guiyuan sword technique is really hard to cultivate, and even their weapons are a lot more than others. It was obvious that these were some low-level disciples, and they didn't even have the money to buy storage bags. Speaking of storage bags, Tan family, one of the 4 major families, made them. Last time they ruthlessly took a large pile from Tan family head. Yu Qianzhou coughed, cleared his throat and said loudly, I also didn't expect that there are so many people cultivating Guiyuan sword technique like me, and I came in a hurry so I didn't prepare any greeting gifts for you. How about this? He took out 2 storage bags from his storage bag, pointed at 2 people in front of him, smiled and waved, come here. The 2 disciples who were pointed at suddenly became excited, and with a pile of swords in their hands, they excitedly walked in front of their idol and bowed, Senior. No need to be so polite, no need to be so polite. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and smiled amiably. In these 2 storage bags, one contains spirit stones and the other contains storage bags. You 2 distribute the things inside. As long as someone is present, each person will get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones, and 1 storage bag. Go. With that said, he handed over the 2 storage bags. Wow. Hundreds of people immediately became excited, so excited. Since when did they get 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones? Not even 1 piece. Moreover, each person was given a storage bag, which was exactly what they needed. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. This generosity, this amiable attitude that didn't put on airs, ordinary people couldn't be compared to him. The 2 disciples quickly put the swords in their hands on the ground, took the storage bags with both hands and bowed. Thank you, Senior. Then they turned around and distributed the bags. Hundreds of people expressed their gratitude in unison, attracting the attention of those with high cultivation on supporting Immortals Island. When the 2 disciples' divine senses entered the storage bags, they were shocked. So many spirit stones, so many storage bags. Both of them looked back at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. There was a beautiful lady beside him. No wonder he was the legendary Senior Yu. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Quickly distribute the bags." The 2 disciples immediately got busy. They distributed the storage bags one by one, 10 pieces of upper-grade spirit stones. The disciples who got the items were also aware. They excitedly put the flying swords and spirit stones into the storage bags, then stood at the side to prevent the repeated distribution. After all, there were still some big sex teachings inside. When Yu Qianqiu saw the disciples who got the items were happy, he was also happy. A few hundred people, 10 spirit stones for each person is only a few thousand pieces. A few thousand pieces of upper-grade spirit stones and hundreds of storage bags can buy the hearts of a few hundred people. Even if he was short of money, he can't be stingy, no matter whether the hearts of the people he bought will be useful in the future. It is definitely worth it. Ziyi saw that Yu Qianqiu was actually distributing the spirit stones. She was worried. She couldn't understand why he did this. It is not easy to earn some money. The liveliness outside made Furong also excited. She wanted to come out and share with Yu Qianqiu, but when she remembered her father's instructions, she was afraid that it will have a bad influence on Yu Qianqiu. She still held back. But Ferdinand's face turned ashen. This kid is too arrogant. He actually openly bought the hearts of the people in Fuxian Island. He doesn't know what low-key is. The spirit stones and storage bags were distributed very quickly. The 2 disciples sent the rest back. Yu Qianqiu took the storage bags, first gave a storage bag to each of them, then gave 100 upper-grade spirit stones to each of them. He smiled and said, "You have worked hard, don't think it is too little." "Thank you, Senior." The 2 of them received it happily, not to mention that Yu Qianqiu personally gave it. The spirit stones are 10 times more than the others. When did the 2 of them get 100 upper-grade spirit stones? The flying swords and spirit stones on the ground were put into the storage bags. The 2 of them hung the storage bags on their waists. The happy expression on their faces can't be stopped. From today onwards, we are also people with bags. Senior, please give us pointers on Guiyuan sword technique. The 2 of them looked at each other, suddenly bowed at the same time. Hundreds of people also bowed together and said, "Senior, please give us pointers." In this kind of atmosphere, Yu Qianqiu was also in high spirits. He found the feeling of being a teacher. After adjusting his mood, his face became solemn. He slowly paced and said, "There is no pointers. I also don't know how to give pointers, but you all remember my words. Although all the sects in the world have thousands of spells, although each has its own magical power, the myriad changes do not deviate from the original. The sea of spells is boundless, but there is a path in the spells. Hard work is the path. Only through suffering can one become superior. The lack of talent can be made up for by hard work. As long as you all remember these, sooner or later you will be able to walk a path of glory that belongs to you. You don't need to imitate others everywhere. Only the things that you comprehend yourself truly belong to you. This is all I want to say. You may wish to think about it." Ferdinand, who was in the garden, was stunned. He didn't expect this little rascal to actually be able to say such a reason. A few experts of supporting Immortal Island who were secretly paying attention to this, also fell into deep thought after hearing this. They faintly felt that Yu Qianqiu's words were somewhat reasonable. It was worth pondering. In fact, Yu Qianqiu himself was just fooling around. He just casually changed the words that he heard in his previous life and felt that it was reasonable. He didn't care whether it was really useful. The key was to say it now. It was enough. However, he didn't know that his words had really caused 2 extraordinary figures to emerge from these disciples. Chapter 380. In the courtyard behind the Wanfen Garden's main hall, Ziyi stood in the courtyard and looked at a tightly shut door with a puzzled expression. Yu Qianqiu and Furong had entered the room again. Furong was the same as Wu Lixue and was also making some strange sounds. Ziyi could not understand it no matter how she thought about it. After half a day, Yu Qianqiu came out of the room happily. Zi walked over and asked, "What are you guys doing?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer and instructed with a serious expression. "Now help me guard this room and don't let anyone in. I have something important to do." Zi saw that he was serious and immediately agreed. Yu Qianqiu then went back into the room. Furong, who was tidying up her clothes, still had an amorous expression on her face. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and disappeared. Furong wasn't surprised at all as she was used to it. Utopia's misty palace, Bai Suzhen was sitting cross-legged with the green destiny sword in her hand. She would draw something in the air with her slender fingers. Then she would shake her head and go into deep thought. It was obvious that she hadn't broken the restriction on the sword. Yu Qianqiu, who suddenly appeared, looked at her silently and didn't disturb her. His eyes revealed a pitiful expression. Such a beautiful woman had been doing such boring things. He didn't know how long she hadn't gone out. It was all for him. Bai Suzhen suddenly looked up and was startled. She put down the sword and smiled gently. "You are here. It's just a broken sword. It's fine if I can't break the restriction on it. At most, I will just use it as a high-grade artifact. You don't have to make things difficult for yourself." Yu Qianqiu looked at her and smiled. "I have some ideas." After Bai Suzhen indirectly rejected him, she sized him up. Seeing that he was quite energetic, she calmed down and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" "I can concoct the 7 orifices exquisite pill now." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Bai Suzhen was surprised and asked, "You found the resurrection grass?" "I haven't picked it yet, but I can pick it any time." "Sister, help me prepare 3 mature 7-star blood orchids and 3 strands of Adumbra flowers silk. I'll go pick the soul-returning grass now and meet up with you here." "Got it?" Bai Suzhen nodded with a gentle smile and went out. Yu Qianqiu stared blankly at her back for a while before disappearing. Outside the great door of the netherworld, Yu Qianqiu, who had suddenly appeared, subconsciously looked around. Although it was not his first time here, the atmosphere here was really suffocating. He glanced at the tightly shut gates of the netherworld. The heaven-swallowing beast that was missing a knocker and 2 of its teeth was still the same. The skulls on the netherworld wall were still staring at him with boundless terror. Now was not the time to enjoy the scenery. Yu Qianqiu walked to the side of the netherworld steel that was guarding it. He raised his hand and released 3 pillars of water, directly sealing the 3 resurrection grass in ice. Then he pulled out the ice pillars along with the resurrection grass and disappeared with the ice pillars. Bai Suzhen had already returned to the room to wait for him. Seeing him appear with 3 ice pillars, she asked in surprise, This thing is not something of the mortal world. When I picked it, I couldn't see it in public, or else it would immediately turn into smoke. I directly sealed it in ice and brought it here." Hearing his words, Bai Suzhen discovered that there were indeed 3 stalks of red spiritual herbs in the icicle, which were similar in color to the 7-star snow orchid. Carefully looking at them, she asked, "You can enter and exit the 9 netherworld cave at any time now?" "That's right. Now I can enter and exit the 9th netherworld cave at any time." Yu Qianqiu smiled proudly. Then his expression turned solemn as he said, "Sis, let's not waste any more time. I still have to rush back. Let's start now." He raised the 3 icicles with his palm, and the cyan flame that had become faintly transparent due to the lowered temperature instantly wrapped around the icicles. The 3 icicles instantly turned into mist and evaporated, while the 3 spirit herbs also turned into sparkling red spiritual liquid. Yu Qianqiu looked at the changes in his palm. His gaze deepened as he said, "Adumbra guarding the soul, soul replenishing the soul, and 7-star body building. There are 3 portions of each. Although this 7 orifices exquisite pill only requires these 3 spirit herbs to refine, each of them is a precious treasure and is truly hard to come by. Sis, toss in the other 2. Bai Suzhen obeyed and tossed the Adumbra flower and 7-star blood orchid into the azure flames. Yu Qianqiu immediately acted as if he was facing a great enemy. He carefully controlled the flames with a cold expression. After all, these were not ordinary spirit pills. It would be a pity if they were wasted. Bai Suzhen shifted her gaze from the azure flames to Yu Qianqiu's face. His exceptionally serious expression made Bai Suzhen feel a little dazed. He was no longer that useless disciple Ong Kwangtsung from back then. The massive wealth and manpower that Utopia possessed were all built by him step by step. Once these powers matured and officially appeared in the cultivation world, it would definitely shock the world. Just how far could he go on this path? After an unknown period of time, a red light suddenly appeared in the room, pulling Bai Suzhen back from her daze. She saw Yu Qianzhou's palm emitting a red light that resembled blood patterns. The red light rippled gently in the room. With a smile on his face, Yu Qianzhou picked up a pill to take a look. He couldn't see the shape of the pill in his fingers. All he could see was a blood-red shadow. It was clearly a demonic color, but it didn't feel demonic. The pure red patterns were soft. "You've succeeded?" Bai Suzhen said in surprise. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, 9 pills in 1 cauldron. Not a single one is missing. It's done. At that moment, everyone in Utopia cast their gazes above Ethereal Peak. They saw the entire ethereal palace suddenly emit a blood-red glow that soared into the sky. After the wind and clouds in the sky were stimulated by the red light, they stirred silently. Gradually, the wind and clouds formed the shape of a dragon and a tiger. They circled and chased each other. It was a spectacular sight. After a full 15 minutes, the blood-red light converged. Only then did the dragon and tiger gradually dissipate, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The 2 people in the room were still looking at the spirit pills. They didn't know that when the pills were formed, an auspicious sign had already appeared in the sky outside. This was a sign that would only appear when a truly heaven-defying spirit pill had been refined. The 7 orifices exquisite pill could compete with the heavens and earth, so it was naturally a heaven-defying spirit pill. "Sis, I'll take 1 and leave first. Give the remaining 2 to my parents. Keep the rest safe. I'll get them from you when I need them." Yu Qianzhou gave 8 spirit pills to Bai Suzhen and put 1 into his storage bag. He smiled and left. By the time he returned to Myriad Fragrance Garden, it was already the next morning. Furong had been waiting for him in the room. When she saw him, she called out happily, "Yu Qianzhou." No matter how close the 2 of them were, Furong liked to call him that, and every time she called him that, she would be very happy. "I'm going to the mulberry garden to find Aunt Jiu. After I see her, I might leave immediately." Yu Qianzhou hugged her and whispered into her ear. Furong hurriedly said, "I'll go with you." "Be good." Yu Qianzhou directly said these 2 words. Furong understood what he meant and didn't say much. She only said quietly, "Then you have to come and see me often. As time goes by, I'll miss you very much." Yu Qianzhou pushed her away and smiled in return. He resolutely turned around and opened the door. When he opened the door, he saw that Ziyi was still standing at the door looking back at him. Yu Qianzhou unsheathed the long sword on his back and soared into the sky. Ziyi immediately followed. Furong ran out of the room and blankly stared at the 2 figures flying away. In the mulberry garden, they faced each other again. Yu Qianzhou stepped forward and bowed to Ma Jiu, asking, "Aunt Jiu, have you made up your mind?" Ma Jiu gently pushed away Lan Bingxue, who was supporting her, and walked to Yu Qianzhou with the help of her walking stick. She looked at him and asked, "Yu Qianzhou, this old woman will entrust you with a task that is within your ability. However, this task may take a long time. Can you promise me?" Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned. From what she said, it seemed that she didn't want to live for another 150 years. Could it be that there was something that she could do in exchange for prolonging her life? He couldn't help but ask, "Aunt Jiu, do you have something else you want me to do?" Ma Jiu shook her head and said, "Answer me first. If it is within your ability, can you guarantee that no matter how much energy and time you spend, you can fulfill your promise to this old woman?" "This junior will naturally do it if it's within my ability," replied Yu Qianzhou respectfully. "Good." Ma Jiu's old eyes suddenly lit up and she slowly said, "I want you to promise me that no matter what happens in the future, this old woman will entrust the safety of Yan Zixia and her daughter to you. You must do your best to protect them and not let anyone harm them unless you, Yu Qianzhou, are no longer in this world. Can you do it?" This. Yu Qianzhou didn't expect such a request. He frowned and said, "Forgive this junior for speaking bluntly, but this junior will think of a way to prolong Senior's life by 150 years. With Senior on supporting Immortal Island, won't you be able to protect them better than this junior?" He just wanted to solve this problem once and for all and didn't want to create another burden. What he didn't know was that Ma Jiu wanted this promise from him was because she found out that Yan Zixia had fallen in love with him. Ma Jiu was prepared to use this promise at a critical time to fulfill their marriage. But now, the situation in the cultivation world didn't look good and Ma Jiu faintly felt that something big was about to happen. The women of the Guan clan have suffered too much, and the women who married out of the Guan clan suffered even more. None of them had a good ending, and this seems to have become the fate of the Guan clan's women. That's why I've never married. Back then, I was the one who supported the marriage between Yan Bugui and Bai Hua. My goal was to prevent the men from the Guan family from arranging her fate, so that she could escape the fate of dying a horrible death. But I was wrong. Yen Bugui has disappointed me too much. Since this old woman made a mistake, this old woman has to bear the consequences. But no one knows what will happen in the future, and I'm afraid that this old woman won't be able to protect them. Yu Qianqiu, this old woman believes that you can prolong this old woman's life by 150 years. But this old woman has lived long enough, so I'm willing to exchange my 150 years with you. Help me protect them and don't let anyone bully them. Ma Jiu slowly said. So that's how it is. Yu Qianqiu hesitated. To be honest, it wasn't a good thing to accept this task. It was definitely a troublesome matter. But the debt of the past must be repaid. He just didn't expect the interest to be so heavy. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath and nodded with a sigh. This junior will agree to senior's request. Chapter 381. Ma Jiugu had always been nice to him. Seeing her so lonely, he almost gave her the 7 orifices exquisite pellet for free. But on second thought he had to pay the price for what he did, so Ma Jiugu should do the same. The most important thing was not to let too many people know that he had such a pellet. Otherwise there would be big trouble. Thank you then. Ma Jiugu nodded with a gratified expression. This is what I owe you, so I should return it. But Yu Qianqiu looked at Lan Bingxue and begged, Jiugu, please help me keep my master's secret. Ma Jiugu paused for a moment. This matter could be said to be of great importance. She was already prepared to tell Feng Xiangtian and the others about this after Yu Qianqiu left. She wanted them to pay attention to avoid unnecessary trouble. But she had just made a difficult request. It was a bit unreasonable for Lan Bingxue not to agree to such a small request. Ma Jiugu also looked at Lan Bingxue and said to Yu Qianqiu, don't worry. I won't tell anyone about your master. Thank you, senior. I'll visit you again when I have the chance. I'm leaving now. Yu Qianqiu bowed. Are you leaving Fuxin Island now? Ma Jiugu asked. Yes. I've promised 10,000 demons and Moon Sect. I'll go there. Yu Qianqiu replied. Moon Sect? Qionghua. Ma Jiugu was also surprised. Why would Moon Sect invite a man? She didn't say anything and pointed her demon slayer wand at the sky. A white light shot out. Yu Qianqiu knew that she was opening the island's great formation for him, so he bowed and said, Thank you, senior. The sword on his back shot out and carried him into the sky. A purple shadow chased after him. The 2 people in the mulberry garden watched as the 2 of them disappeared into the sky. Ma Jiugu suddenly sighed and said, The sky is high, the birds fly, the sea is wide, the fish leap. I heard that Yu Qianqiu said such words when he was expelled from the sect. Now it seems that the young man's words were true. Bingxue, can you think of that? Back then he was just a refinement stage disciple, but in just a dozen years he has already become famous in the cultivation world. He has become a VIP that all the major sects are scrambling to invite. His achievements are extraordinary. No matter how high his achievements are, he still has to be polite to you. Lan Bingxue smiled. Ma Jiugu shook her head, turned around and murmured in the direction of Penglai Pavilion. Feng Xiangtian, who was in the middle of the discussion, suddenly quieted down and listened attentively. Then he frowned and remained silent. Ma Jiugu told him that it was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to join Supporting Immortal Island again. In the future, Supporting Immortal Island should try not to provoke Yu Qianqiu. Supporting Immortal Island couldn't afford to offend the person behind him. A man and a woman were flying across the sea towards the mainland. Ziyi suddenly asked, Yu Qianqiu, you promised her to protect the mother and daughter. What about the task Senior Bai gave us? With the #1 sect in the world, the Supporting Immortal Island, around, no one would dare to provoke the 100 Flowers Palace. We don't need to guard it every day. I will ask the 4 families to keep an eye on it. If anything happens we can talk about it. Then Yu Qianqiu turned his head and smiled. Ziyi, when you go to the Moon Clan this time, remember to get the money they promised first. Otherwise it will be bad if they go back on their word. I know. When I see them I will ask them to pay first. If they dare to go back on their word, humph. Help me see if there is anything valuable in the Moon Clan that can pay off the debt. I will move it back to the Wu family and ask them to sell it for money, Ziyi said without hesitation. It seemed that after staying with Wu Lixue for a few days, she had learned a lot about the Wu family. She was a fast learner. I see. Yu Qianqiu looked at her in surprise and nodded. He didn't expect that she would move things to pay off the debt. Yu Qianqiu was very happy for her improvement. Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu didn't know where he was at first. Thinking of the disciples of the Moon Clan from the Ethereal Palace, He asked Chu Ping-er and found out where he was. In the Longhuan mountain range, there were dense vegetation and ferocious beasts. There were few people there. There was a mountain that was high and steep, towering into the sky. Looking from afar, if one was on the mountain he would be able to reach for the stars. The Moon Clan was at the top of the mountain. Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi flew here late at night. After seeing the mountain they finally understood why it was called the Moon Clan. The mountain was so high that a bright moon seemed to be above their heads. They could see it when they looked up. Looking at the entire Moon Clan from the top of the mountain, there were all kinds of buildings covering the entire mountain. Under the bright moonlight, as soon as the two approached, they heard Hua Rui's voice from the top of the mountain. "Are you Qianqiu and Ziyi here?" She had obviously been waiting for a long time. "Senior Hua, it is indeed the two of us." After Yu Qianqiu replied, the two of them descended. Hua Rui walked over and nodded with a smile. "I thought you were going to stay on Fuxian Island for a few more days. It's good that you're here. Please follow me to see the clan leader." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that Qianghua Fairy wouldn't come out to meet people easily. Now that the two of them had just arrived, they were being led to see her. This was really a big deal. However, it seemed that the main target was Ziyi. Did the Moon Clan already know Ziyi's master's identity? The moonlight was like water and the Moon Clan was high up in the sky. It looked a bit like the Moon Palace. With a stomach full of questions, Yu Qianqiu followed Hua Rui with Ziyi. They didn't go to the quiet and huge main hall of the Moon Clan. Instead, they went to a pavilion in the distance under the moonlight. From afar, they could vaguely see a woman standing in the pavilion. When they got closer, they couldn't see the woman because the angle was different. There was a board hanging on the pavilion. On it were 3 beautiful words, Silver Moon Pavilion. Obviously, it was also written by a woman. Hua Rui led the two of them up the pavilion, and they immediately saw a woman leaning against the railing. Her white robes were like frost, and her hair was coiled up into a bun. She was immersed in the mercury-like moonlight, graceful and lonely, and her back seemed rather desolate. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. Is this the famous Qianghua Fairy of the Moon Clan? It was said that the Moon Clan was different from other clans. Every generation, the top cultivator of the clan would be the Moon Clan's leader. Is this woman the top cultivator of the Moon Clan? Leader Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi are here, Hua Rui said. Without a doubt, it was the leader of the Moon Clan. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly bowed and said, Yu Qianqiu greets you, senior. Ziyi still stood there without moving. She didn't care about the leader or leader. The woman nodded. After hesitating for a long time, she slowly turned around. She didn't say anything and stared at Ziyi in a daze. With this look, it was hard for her to move her eyes away. Yu Qianqiu looked up. After seeing the woman's face, his eyes brightened. He couldn't stop clicking his tongue. It was said that the beauty of the Moon Clan's Qianghua Fairy was unparalleled in the world. This was not an exaggeration. She was even comparable to Bai Suzhen. But why did it feel like he had seen her somewhere before? No one spoke in the attic. Yu Qianqiu was also thinking hard. He just couldn't remember where he had seen her before. Anyway, she looked very familiar. Seeing that she kept staring at Ziyi, Yu Qianqiu subconsciously glanced at Ziyi. Then his eyes widened and his head swung back and forth between Ziyi and the Qianghua Fairy. Damn. No wonder she looked so familiar. If it wasn't for the fact that she looked like Nongzhu, she would be a replica of the Qianghua Fairy. Especially her mouth and nose. They were obviously made from the same mold. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were rolling around. Ziyi also felt that she had seen the Qianghua Fairy somewhere before, but she couldn't remember. Thus, the silence in the attic was broken by her. Ziyi asked, You are the leader of the Moon Clan? Yes. The Qianghua Fairy nodded excitedly. As soon as she spoke, Yu Qianqiu sighed inwardly. It was one thing for her to be so beautiful, but even her voice was so pleasant to the ears. No wonder she did not meet people easily. Just think about it, how could a normal man have such a calm disposition? Ziyi pointed at Hua Rui and said, She said that as long as I come, she will give me 20 million top-grade spiritual stones. Give me the money first. She still maintained her straightforward style of speaking. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu just stood aside obediently and didn't look anywhere. It was as if he was telling others that what she said had nothing to do with him. Are you usually short of money? The Qianghua Fairy's pleasant voice was heard. Her eyes were filled with concern. I've always been short of money. Ziyi stretched out her hand and said, Give me the money you promised first. You've always been short of money? Qianghua's voice was a little out of control. She looked at Ziyi up and down and bit her lip. Then she said in an agitated tone, Where is your master? Has your master never given you any spiritual stones? No. Ziyi shook her head and said, give me the money first. If you go back on your words, who will I ask for the money from? We can talk about it after you give me the money. Hearing this, the Qianghua fairy's face instantly turned pale. She looked at Ziyi with extreme pity. Endless sadness and annoyance flowed in her eyes, as if she had done something wrong to Ziyi. She said in a trembling voice, Rui, give her 20 million. No, give her 50 million. 50 million? Yu Qianzhou and Ziyi were stunned at the same time. Hua Rui sighed and shook her head. She took out a storage bag from her storage bag and gave it to Ziyi. Ziyi took it and couldn't wait to use her spiritual consciousness to check it. After that, she stared at the Qianghua fairy and said, you gave me more than you wanted. I didn't force you. Don't go back on your words. I won't. Just take it. If you don't have enough, come to the Moon Clan to find me. When the Qianghua fairy said this, her voice was a little choked. Yu Qianzhou secretly glanced at her and found that there were tears in her eyes. This confirmed his suspicion. There must be something going on. There must be something going on. Ziyi also seemed to realize that she had taken too much money. She said a little embarrassedly, since you gave me so much money, you can ask whatever you want. I'll tell you everything I can, but I definitely won't tell you what I can't say. The Qianghua fairy nodded repeatedly. She turned around and wiped away the tears in her eyes. Then she turned back and asked, I heard that your master is called Mr. Nongzhu. What's her real name? Is it Xiaoyao? Chapter 382. Ziyi held the storage bag and shook her head. My master's name is Nongzhu, not Xiaoyao. Is there anyone called Xiaoyao among your master's friends? Or have you ever heard of a person called Xiaoyao from your master? Jade Flower Fairy asked. No. Ziyi thought for a while and said, when and where did your master accept you as a disciple? Jade Flower Fairy asked again. I don't know. Ziyi shook her head and said, I've been with my master for as long as I can remember. He didn't tell me when and where he accepted me. Where does your master live? Can you take me to have a look? I can't tell you that, nor can I take you there. Not everyone can go there. Ziyi refused. Hearing this, Jade Flower Fairy was disappointed and became silent. Yu Qianzhou didn't say a word. His eyes sneaked glances at this and then at that. There was a scene in his mind. The old handsome guy changed his name to Xiao Yao. Back then, when he was playing around outside, he picked up a beautiful woman and got her pregnant. After the beautiful woman gave birth to a child, she suddenly realized that the child and the man were gone. She searched for them for a long time but still couldn't find them. In fact, the old handsome man secretly took the child away. In order to avoid trouble, the old handsome man told the child that he was her master. When the child grew up, she also thought that he was her master. In fact, they were father and daughter. Interesting. Only a handsome man like Nongzhu could get such a beautiful woman so easily. Only a beautiful woman like Qianghua could attract a handsome man like Nongzhu easily. It seemed that Nongzhu was too much of a playboy. She gave birth to a child for him, but he ran away. It was too wicked. Yu Qianzhou smiled. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was true. Is there a red crescent birthmark on the inside of your left arm? Jade Flower Fairy suddenly asked. Ziyi subconsciously looked at her arm and asked curiously, how did you know I have a birthmark on my arm? Qianghua Fairy became excited and took a step forward. However, Hua Rui stopped her and shook her head slightly. She pointed at Yu Qianzhou and said, Master, this is Yu Qianzhou. Here. Listening to their conversation, Yu Qianzhou is 100% sure that Ziyi is the daughter of Jasper Flower Fairy. He is secretly happy, thinking that he has something on Nongzhu. Ziyi suddenly shoves the storage bag into his hand. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he sheepishly stuffed the storage bag into his own storage bag. The Jade Flower Fairy immediately asked, Ziyi, why did you give him the money? Before Ziyi can speak, Yu Qianzhou hurriedly said, I keep it for her. She can use it whenever she wants. Although Ziyi didn't understand why he said that, she believed that there must be a reason, so she nodded. Qianghua Fairy, who has been in a superior position for a long time, is naturally not easy to fool. The sadness on her face turned into indifference in an instant. She stared at Yu Qianzhou and asked, Are you Yu Qianzhou who betrayed the sect twice? Why is Ziyi with you? As a supreme master, she naturally hates people like this the most. And Yu Qianzhou also hates it when people talk about him like this. But for the sake of such a beautiful woman and Ziyi's mother, he didn't care about it. He thought for a while and sighed, Ziyi, you heard it. Why don't you go back? I don't have a good reputation. If you follow me, you will be implicated sooner or later. You go back first and I will explain to your master later. I won't go back. Hearing that, Zi immediately glared at him. She hasn't finished the task that Senior Bai asked her to do. How can she go back now? She stared at the Jade Flower Fairy and said, although you gave me more money, you did it voluntarily. It's none of your business who I'm with. The Jade Flower Fairy's beautiful face suddenly froze. She looked at Zi, who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. She could scold anyone except Zi. Finally, she stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, do you know Ziyi's master? Yu Qianqiu said with a wry smile, I don't just know her. Ziyi's master asked me to bring her out. I don't want to. But her master's cultivation is too high. I can't do anything about it. Anyone who heard that they were not welcome would be unhappy, and Ziyi was no exception. Her pretty face was almost frozen. She stared at Yu Qianqiu coldly. Yu Qianqiu shrank his head. It seemed that he was completely afraid of this woman. It seemed that only now did he look like he was taking care of her money. The Jade Flower Fairy and Hua Rui were both stunned. They didn't expect that the audacious Yu Qianqiu would be so afraid of Ziyi, and they didn't expect that Ziyi would be so tough. The Jade Flower Fairy looked at Yu Qianqiu in a more relaxed way. She asked, do you know where Ziyi's master lives? Yes. We came out from her master's place this time. Before Yu Qianqiu finished his words, Ziyi shouted, Yu Qianqiu, if you dare to tell others where my master and I live, don't blame me for being rude to you. I won't tell you. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. Ziyi turned her head and warned the Jade Flower Fairy, I don't care what kind of master you are, but there are some things you'd better not know. The Jade Flower Fairy was stunned again. She looked at Yu Qianqiu again and felt that he had been wronged. She even thought of a possibility. In this saber drawing competition, people said that Yu Qianqiu wanted to collect money. However, she had never heard that Yu Qianqiu was a greedy person. This time he even took out such a treasure. Could it be that he was forced by Ziyi? If that was the case, then Yu Qianqiu had indeed been wronged. Yu Qianqiu said to her with a bitter smile, we've been here. If there's nothing else, we'll leave now. They had come here to get the money. Now, not only did they get the money, but they also had an extra 30 million yuan. Moreover, they knew a secret. Why not leave? Wait. The Jade Flower Fairy's voice was much gentler. Looking at the two of them, she frowned slightly and said, it's too dangerous for you two to walk around the cultivation world alone. Why don't you join the Cultivation World Alliance? At least most cultivators won't do anything to you under the current circumstances. Will the Cultivation Alliance accept us? Yu Qianqiu asked. He kinda wanted to join. Even if he didn't put in any effort, at least they could share information. That way it would be more convenient for him to do many things. The Jade Flower Fairy's eyes paused on the two of them. The Cultivation Alliance might not accept them. One had a bad reputation and violated the taboo of the cultivation world, and the other had an unknown background. After thinking for a while, she made up her mind and said, I'll be your guarantor. The Cultivation Alliance should accept you. Why don't you stay here for the time being? I'll let you know when it's done. The Moon Clan wanted a man to stay overnight? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He hesitated and decided not to be the first. He shook his head and said, thank you for your help, senior. We still have to go to the 10,000 demons. We'll leave now. As soon as he finished speaking, Purple Dress flew away with a whoosh. Obviously, Purple Dress didn't have a good impression of the Moon Clan leader. Yu Qianqiu smiled helplessly at the Jade Flower Fairy. His long sword popped out and he chased after Purple Dress quickly. The Jade Flower Fairy hurried to the railing and looked longingly at the two figures disappearing into the depths of the stars. Hua Rui walked over and said softly, Sister, are you sure it's her? Who else could it be? Her eyes are so similar to that heartless man. And the crescent-shaped birthmark on her hand. The Jade Flower Fairy's eyes were already misty with tears. When I first saw her, I thought she looked like you. That feeling was very strong. I didn't expect it to be her. Hua Rui sighed. Suddenly, she turned around and asked, Sister, do you suspect that her master is brother-in-law? The Jade Flower Fairy shook her head and said in confusion, I'm not sure. Back then Xiaoyao was an ordinary man who wandered around. I was fascinated by him and was attracted by him. After so many years, I always thought that the father and daughter had already passed away. Now that I see Ziyi, I suddenly realized that the name Xiaoyao is not like the name of an ordinary person. How can an ordinary person be as free and unfettered as he is? Mr. Nongzhu. Didn't Xiaoyao always play with a purple-black bamboo flute in his hand? When I first saw brother-in-law, I knew he was not an ordinary man. But I couldn't tell that he was also a cultivator. I didn't expect. Huarui smiled bitterly and said, I didn't expect him to be a hidden master. Sister, you didn't see what happened. The 7 cultivators in the last phase of the nature's test were all scared when they heard his name. You can imagine how powerful brother-in-law's cultivation is. It's funny that we didn't see it at all after spending so much time with him. He hid it from me so well. The Jade Flower Fairy was about to cry. Sister, why did brother-in-law secretly take Purple Dress away? Didn't he have a reason? I don't think brother-in-law is an unreasonable person. Huarui asked in confusion. After Purple Dress was born, I saw that she had the spiritual root of cultivation, so I told Xiaoyao about my identity as a cultivator. Xiaoyao didn't seem to care at all. I should have noticed it at that time. How could a mortal be so indifferent after knowing our existence? The Jade Flower Fairy smiled bitterly and said, Then I told him that mortals have a short lifespan. I wanted to bring Purple Dress back to the Moon Clan to cultivate. Who knew that he would strongly oppose it? We even had a fight about it. The next day he disappeared with his daughter. Huarui was silent for a while and said, In that case, the reason makes sense. Brother-in-law is a hidden master, so he might not be interested in a sect like the Moon Clan. Brother-in-law might want to teach Purple Dress personally. Otherwise, how could she have reached the last phase of the nature's test at her age? At least with our Moon Clan's ability, we can't do that. In that case, why did he hide it from me? If he let me know his identity, I would have let Purple Dress go with him. Then we wouldn't have lost contact for so many years. The Jade Flower Fairy smiled miserably and said, I think he's just like his name. He's used to being free and unfettered. After being with me for a long time, he thinks I'm annoying. What master? Could it be a master in the soul formation stage? It's not impossible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to scare the 7 cultivators in the last phase of the nature's test. Huarui reminded, Sister, do you remember the mysterious master who appeared during the trial in the demon realm? The few masters and elders of the Fuxian Island were all injured. Didn't you say that the mysterious master could be a soul formation cultivator? If there really is a soul formation cultivator in this world, why can't brother-in-law be one? The mysterious Mr. Nongzhu. The Jade Flower Fairy smiled miserably and said, Xiaoyao is a soul formation cultivator. Is it really possible? Why did he hide it from me? Chapter 383. The night sky was bright, and the man and woman flying in the sky were the first to bear the sunlight. Yu Qianqiu looked at Ziyi from time to time with a weird smile on his face. This girl's mother was really generous. She was much more generous than Nongzhu. Nongzhu. Xiaoyao? He always walking among flowers without leaving his real name, tut. This old handsome man was really a master of picking flowers. If you dare to touch me again, I will bring Jasper Flower Fairy to your purple bamboo forest in the South Sea one day and see what will happen. Yu Qianqiu smiled even more happily when he thought about how he would be able to teach that shrewd Nongzhu a lesson. He actually faintly looked forward to this day. In the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea, Nongzhu of the Langshen courtyard was kneeling beside the tea table in the room. Suddenly she felt her nose itch. She touched her nose and asked curiously, Is someone plotting against me? Why do I feel like sneezing? She shook her head and placed 2 cups made of purple bamboo. She lifted the teapot that was boiling on the stove and filled the 2 cups with fragrant tea. She put the teapot aside and pushed a cup of tea to Bai Changchun with 2 slender fingers. Nongzhu looked at Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged, and said angrily, Why did you come to me again? Bai Changchun, who had always been serious, smiled lightly and said, When I heard that the purple bamboos here are blooming, I missed the time when we first met. You treated me with this purple bamboo-scented tea. It still lingers on my tongue and I can't stop thinking about it. It's really a rare fragrant tea. After so many years, how can I not come when the purple bamboos are blooming again? From the tone of their conversation, it could be heard that they had a close relationship. No one had ever seen Bai Changchun talk to someone in this tone. Old Bai, now that you mention it, I remember that when you came here for the first time, the purple bamboos were blooming the next day. After the flowers withered, a large number of purple bamboos died. Some time ago, after Yu Qianqiu came, the purple bamboo forest blossomed again the next day. Are you too the nemesis of my purple bamboo forest? If not, it's too much of a coincidence. Nongzhu said doubtfully. Dead again? Bai Changchun was startled as he held the teacup in his hand. Nongzhu shook her head painfully and said, Once a bamboo blooms, it's a sign of withering. Hundreds of purple bamboos. It's gone again. 100 or so bamboos to the purple bamboo forest is just a drop in the bucket. Bai Changchun said indifferently, and began to slowly taste the fragrant tea. Nongju was so angry that she raised her eyebrows and glared at him. She shouted, "I won't let you drink this tea." Bai Changchun stretched out his hand and snatched the teacup from the other party's hand. Not minding it, he said indifferently, "I advise you not to disturb me while I'm drinking tea. Otherwise, I guarantee that you won't see a single bamboo in this southern sea purple bamboo forest ever again." This was a blatant threat. Rongzhu stood up abruptly and scolded, "Bai Changchun, you're using the fact that your cultivation is higher than mine to threaten me." Bai Changchun suddenly sighed and said, "When I first met you, I drank purple bamboo flower tea once. This is the second time. The day the East Holy Land opens is not far away. I wonder if I will have a third chance in this lifetime." Nongzhu was startled. She looked at the teacup in her hand and said with a twitching expression, "You're using the soft approach when the hard approach doesn't work." Although she saw through his intention, she still sat down and put the teacup in front of Bai Changchun. She asked, "Do you really think that you Qianqiu, can solve the current situation? You'll know after you try." Bai Changchun picked up the teacup and drank. "Try? This is such a big thing and you're just randomly sending a disciple to try?" Nongzhu immediately jumped up and pointed at him, scolding, "Bai Changchun, it turns out that what you said about stargazing at night is fake. If you want to try, let your apprentice have a try. Why do you have to involve my daughter? What are you planning?" "No, I have to call Ziyi back." "What's the hurry?" Bai Changchun said indifferently, "Ziyi should go out and take a walk. Look at her, she has been with you for so many years. Other than her cultivation improving, what do you think she has learned from you? She knows nothing. Maybe she can learn a lot from you, Qianqiu. At least there's no danger." Nongzhu said loudly, "I can let her live a carefree life, a life that everyone dreams of." "This is not Ziyi's dream. This is your dream. What's the difference between a pig and a life without joy, anger, sorrow, and joy?" Bai Changchun looked at Nongzhu and sneered, "Don't use your selfishness as an excuse to protect your daughter. You just don't want your daughter to leave you. An eagle will spread its wings one day. If you follow an eagle, you will starve to death sooner or later. A cultivator at the final stage of the nature's test doesn't know what the world is like. You're really a good father." "I'm selfish." Nongzhu's face changed. After a moment of silence, she shook her head and said, "No, it's too dangerous to follow you, Qianqiu. You don't know your disciple's character. He is born to cause trouble. He is called the scum of the cultivation world. I don't expect Ziyi to learn anything from him. Ziyi is not a little girl anymore. It's too late for you to teach her something now. Let her follow you, Qianqiu. Maybe the way of educating the scum of the cultivation world is more appropriate than that of a father like you." Bai Changchun took a sip of tea, stared at Nongzhu and shook his head. "Don't worry. Let Ziyi face it bravely. You often travel in the secular world. You should know that more hardships are not entirely a bad thing. At least I believe that you Qianqiu will have a way to protect your daughter when she is really in danger." "Old man Bai, be honest. Am I really as bad as you said?" Nongzhu asked with a pale face. "You're too good. You heard Ziyi." Bai Changchun suddenly sighed. "When I left the Bai family, I was worried about what would happen to my family without my protection. Later, although there were many hardships, I didn't intervene. As a result, they got to where they are now step by step, better than I imagined. Nongzhu, do you really want to take care of Ziyi for the rest of her life?" Nongzhu didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out slowly, feeling lonely. Bai Changchun watched his figure disappear into the depths of the bamboo forest. He picked up his tea and continued to drink as if nothing had happened. On the beach, a melodious flute sounded. Nongzhu held the flute horizontally to his mouth. Facing the sea breeze, his 10 slender fingers moved up and down. The music he played was as lonely as his mood, with a touch of sadness. The waves gently surged in front of his feet. Before long, a flock of seagulls fluttered their wings and landed around him as if they were also listening. At this moment, a dozen water columns suddenly sprayed out of the sea. Then, a dozen huge fishtails swung out of the sea, making waves and disappeared. Wah wah. A dozen humpback whales jumped out of the sea, turned around and smashed into the sea. The waves danced and a dozen of their backs came out of the sea. They swam toward Nongzhu together as if they had heard the call of Nongzhu's flute. Nongzhu kept playing the flute and walked slowly to the sea. He stepped on the waves as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. After walking dozens of meters on the sea, the leading whale in front of him left the group, swam directly into the water and gently lifted Nongju up. Nongju stood on the back of a whale while playing the sad song. Accompanied by a group of whales, he kept walking toward the deep sea. The sound of the flute penetrated the sea and spread around. 3 old men were flying fast in the sky. The leading one was the white-robed old man on the snow mountain. The other 2 must have high cultivation to be able to keep up with his flying speed. After a while, the island where the South Sea purple bamboo forest was located was in the sight of the 3. When they were approaching and about to land, they suddenly heard the melodious flute coming from the distant sea. They looked at each other and the white-robed old man said, "It's Nongju's flute. Nongju is not on the island. Let's go." The 3 quickly flew over the purple bamboo forest. Bai Changchun, who was in the house below, paused for a moment with a teacup in his hand. The sky was blue and the sea was wide. Riding a whale in the sea, Nongju seemed to have figured something out. The sound of the flute gradually became clearer. The accompanying humpback whales also became cheerful and jumped out of the sea from time to time. Suddenly, 3 sharp whistles came from the sky, followed by 3 huge chi forces falling from the sky. More than a dozen whales became a little restless. Nongju stopped playing the flute and saw the 3 elders slowly descending from the sky. They floated about 3 or 4 meters above the sea surface and surrounded him in the middle. "Nongju, you're really living a leisurely life." The white-robed old man snorted. Nongju held the flute in her hand and gently tapped it in her palm. She said in surprise, "Bing Qingzi." She then looked at the gray-robed old man on the left and the black-robed old man on the right. She frowned and said, "Hu Changshou Yin Baikang, the 3 of you are experts at the late transforming realm. Are you looking for me?" The white-robed Bing Qingzi shouted, "Nongju, don't play dumb. You once said that you wouldn't interfere in the affairs of the cultivation world. Why did you break your promise?" Nongju frowned and gently waved the flute in her hand. The whales all sank to the bottom of the sea. He stepped on the waves and sneered, "When did I break my promise to interfere in the affairs of the cultivation world? Bing Qingzi, don't think that you can talk nonsense just because your cultivation is high. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" He looked at the other 2 and said, "Are the 2 of you here to cause trouble for me?" The black-robed Yin Baikang laughed and said, "Brother Nongju, don't misunderstand. Brother Changshou and I were invited here to testify." "Testify? What kind of testimony?" Nongju asked as she looked at the position of the 3. They were obviously afraid that she would run away, so they surrounded her. "Your disciple Zi was sent to the cultivation world of China by you. How dare you say that you didn't interfere?" Bing Qingzi shouted. Nongju snorted and said, "That's right. My disciple Zi did go to the cultivation world of China. So what? Does the cultivation world of China belong to your family and others can't go there?" "Don't be anxious." Yin Baikang pressed his hands against the 2 of them and said to Nongju with a smile, "Brother Nongju, it's like this. Your disciple Zi is now together with someone called Yu Qianqiu. A few days ago, one of Bing Qingzi's disciples died in the hands of Yu Qianqiu. Bing Qingzi's other disciples did not take revenge because of your disciple Zi. We only want to know whether your disciple Zi has already been involved in the affairs of the cultivation world of China. Regardless of whether she has or not, we should take the opportunity to clarify things now. Brother Nongju, we advise you to bring Zi back to the South Ocean to prevent any misunderstandings. As for the past, we can let bygones be bygones for your sake. What do you think?" Nongju was slightly stunned. "That fellow Yu Qianqiu has already taken action? Could it be that you're ignoring my words? It seems that Bing Qingzi's disciples are all at the end of the tribulation transcendence. How could they be killed by him? This fellow is really a genius." Nongju looked at the 3 of them and pondered over this matter. Suddenly, she realized that Bai Changchun had appeared above their heads and was staring coldly down with his hands behind his back. "Why did you guys come today? Why did you guys come today? What a coincidence." Nongju touched her forehead with her hand and shook her head with a bitter smile. "It's fine if it's me, but these 3 experts at the end of the soul transformation realm didn't even notice that there's someone above them. The title of the world's #1 expert is really not just for show." Hu Changshou, who had been silent all this while, had an arrogant look on his face as he said aggressively, "What? Do the 3 of us have to pick an auspicious day to look for you? How would I dare?" Nongju waved her hand with a sarcastic expression. Pointing upwards, she shook her head and said, "Good luck to you guys." The 3 of them weren't afraid of him playing any tricks, so they raised their heads and looked up. But with just this glance, their expressions changed greatly, and they were almost scared out of their wits. Dressed in a light green robe, with a thin face and an icy gaze, he was staring at them indifferently, as if he was looking at a few ants. If it wasn't Bai Changchun, that killing god, who else could it be? The three of them immediately teleported dozens of meters away and stood in a row. The arrogance on Hu Changshuo's face disappeared instantly. He pointed at Bai Changchun and asked, "Bai Changchun, what do you mean by standing above us?" The remaining meaning of his words was self-evident. "Do you want to sneak attack us?" Bai Changchun was indeed very conceited. He didn't even look at them. With his hands behind his back, he looked into the distant sky and said calmly, "What do you want?" The meaning of these words was clearly telling them, "Whatever meaning you want, I'll give it to you." Hu Changshuo smacked his lips and didn't dare to say anything. Bing Qingzi said in a low voice, "Bai Changchun, this is a private matter between us and Nongzhu. You don't need to intervene." "Did I say that I want to intervene?" Bai Changchun said indifferently. He withdrew his gaze from the sky and looked at Bing Qingzi. He asked again, "Do you really want me to intervene?" Bing Qingzi's face stiffened. He didn't know what to say after hearing Chu Yang's words. The key was that this guy was too strong. The three of them weren't his match at all. If they said anything that made him unhappy, he would definitely take action immediately. Once he took action, he had never seen anyone survive under his hands. Talking to such a person was very stressful. "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Let's not talk too much." Yin Baikong tried to persuade them. Finally, he smiled at Bai Changchun and said, "Old Bai, we have something to discuss with Nongzhu. Don't think too much. We don't mean anything else." "How do you know that I'm thinking too much?" Bai Changchun's gaze fell on him again. Yin Baikong's smiling face immediately squeezed together. He nodded repeatedly and said, "It's good that you're not thinking too much." Chapter 384. The conversation in front of her made Nongzhu slightly sigh in her heart. Just now, the three of them were using both carrot and stick to force her. But when they met Bai Changchun, even if Bai Changchun was aggressive, the three of them had to suppress their anger. This was the prestige of the world's #1 master. The three were experts at the late spirit-severing stage, rare top cultivators in the world. They had never been bullied like this before. If it was in the past, they wouldn't have to be so humble. But since the battle in the East Sea, where 16 unconvinced spirit-severing experts were killed by Bai Changchun, no one in the world dared to go against Bai Changchun's edge. They were in a stalemate. Nongzhu said to Bai Changchun, "Yu Qianqiu killed Bing Qingzi's disciple. This old guy is famous for protecting his disciples. Should we tell them that Yu Qianqiu is your disciple?" "There's no need. Let this junior solve his own problems with his own ability. I can't help him for a lifetime. However, if someone who shouldn't have interfered, I won't let a single one of them get away." Bai Changchun expressed his stance through voice transmission. Nongzhu stared at Bai Changchun for a while. Her eyes flickered. No one knew what she was thinking. After a long time, he broke the stalemate and said, "Bing Qingzi, my disciple Zi is going to the cultivation world of Wuxia to gain experience. She has no right to interfere in your affairs. If she is really involved in your affairs coincidentally, then let me do it with my own ability. As long as you old guys don't interfere, I will also make my stance clear. I, Nongzhu, will not interfere with the junior's business." Bing Qingzi and the other two were startled. They didn't expect Nongzhu to say such words even with Bai Changchun's support. Wasn't this what they wanted to achieve? Yin Baikong immediately nodded and said, "Brother Nongzhu is right. This is the junior's business. Us old guys can't interfere. Let the juniors fight with their own abilities." He looked at the other two and said, "I, Yin Baikong, have the same stance as Brother Nongzhu. What do you two think?" Bing Qingzi and Hu Changshuo's eyes flashed with joy. They had already sworn an oath. Now that Nongzhu had expressed her stance, they had nothing to worry about and could let their disciples do whatever they wanted. The two of them exchanged glances and nodded in unison. It settled then. Looking at Nongzhu, Bai Changchun was also a little surprised. He didn't expect that Nongzhu was really willing to let his daughter suffer. It seemed that Bai Changchun's previous persuasion had stimulated Nongzhu and ruined his previous plan. Now it was really up to Yu Qianqiu and the others. "Since everything has been made clear, we shall not disturb you any further." Yin Baikong cupped his fists towards Bai Changchun and Nongzhu. The three of them did not want to stay any longer and shot into the sky. After watching them disappear, Nongzhu shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "I've given my daughter to your disciple. I hope he won't let me down." Bai Changchun was speechless. If I knew you would agree, I wouldn't have come out. What an unnecessary move. It was not convenient for him to say this. If he did, he would be suspected of plotting against Nongzhu. Bai Changchun snorted coldly and disappeared with a swing of his sleeve. He returned to the Lang Shen courtyard in the blessed land of bamboo and continued drinking tea. 2 days later, Yu Qianshou and Ziyi arrived at a stretch of deep mountains. On the main mountain range between the mountains, there were magnificent buildings that were connected layer by layer. This was the 10,000 Demons, the #1 demonic sect. Before the two of them got close, they heard Qiu Weiyuan's laughter coming from afar. "Brother Yu, you're finally here." Obviously, they were discovered by the people of the 10,000 Demons as soon as they arrived at this area. 5 gray figures came together and stopped in front of the two of them. The one leading them was Qiu Weiyuan. The two of them also stopped flying. Yu Qianshou bowed and said, "Greetings, senior." The other 4 had cold expressions. Yu Qianshou had seen them before. They were the 4 generals of the demon clan who had been following Qiu Weiyuan for a long time. The 4 of them used to be the 4 servants of the previous sect leader. Not only were they high in cultivation, but they were also infamous. Because Qiu Weiyuan had been working outside for a long time, the previous sect leader sent the 4 of them to Qiu Weiyuan. It was probably more to protect his own disciple. "I just received news from the Cultivation Alliance. They said that Qianghua Fairy of the Moon Clan has already vouched for the two of you. Now you are also members of the Cultivation Alliance." Qiu Weiyuan laughed. Yu Qianshou and Ziyi looked at each other. They didn't expect Qianghua Fairy to be so efficient. Qiu Weiyuan raised his hand and said, "Please." The few of them flew directly to the Grand Palace at the top of the mountain range. The entire palace had the aura of sky-bearing and was indeed magnificent. As soon as they landed in front of the palace, a group of people walked out of the palace. All of them looked serious and flew away, leaving only 3 old men standing in front of the palace. Qiu Weiyuan, who was originally happy, was slightly stunned. He quickly walked to a gloomy old man with white hair tied up by a black crown in the middle and asked, "Palace Master, did something happen?" So this was the famous Palace Master of the 10,000 Demons, Bu Yunxiao. When Yu Qianshou heard this, he sized him up carefully. Bu Yunxiao nodded with a serious expression and said, "Wen, I just received news that eldest brother Yan Bugue brought a group of people to the 100 Flowers Valley. They are now in a confrontation with the Cultivation Alliance. Something might happen at any time. Go with the 4 generals of the Demon Clan. It's best if you can persuade eldest brother not to do anything for Master's sake." "I'll go see Master now." "Ah, eldest brother," he sighed. Qiu Weiyuan stomped his feet and sighed. When he turned around and saw Yu Qianshou and Zi, he realized that he almost forgot about them. He immediately turned around and said, "Palace Master, these 2 are Yu Qianshou and Miss Zi." "You see?" Bu Yunxiao glanced at the 2 and his gloomy face immediately changed into a smile. He cupped his hands and said, "I happen to have something to do. Sorry for the delay." Then he turned around and said to the old man next to him, "Fifth junior brother, take the 2 guests to rest. Don't neglect them. I'll go see Master and come back soon." The 5th junior brother nodded and raised his hand to Yu Qianshou and Zi. He said with a smile, "Please follow me. There's no need to trouble yourself." Yu Qianshou bowed to Bu Yunxiao and said, "Palace Master Bu, Zi and I have just joined the Cultivation Alliance. Since the Cultivation Alliance is in trouble, we should do our best to help. Since Senior Qiu is going to the 100 Flowers Valley, we decided to go with Senior Qiu. He didn't want to come to the 10,000 Demons in the first place. Not only did he not get any benefits, he might even be schemed against by others. If it wasn't for Qiu Weiyuan, he wouldn't have come. Now he found an excuse to leave. Bu Yunxiao pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, "If that's the case, I won't force you. After this is over, I hope the 2 of you can give me face and come to my Myriad Demons Palace again. I want to apologize for my poor hospitality this time." "Palace Master, you're too kind." Yu Qianshou cupped his hands and said. At the side, Qiu Weiyuan seemed to be getting impatient. He waved his hand and yelled, "Let's go." He and the 4 generals of the Mo family shot into the sky first. Yu Qianshou also jumped onto his flying sword and chased after them with Zi. "Yu Qianshou." Bu Yunxiao stared at the figures flying away and mumbled a few words. Then he shot into the deep mountains. A few figures flew across the sky. Qiu Weiyuan and the other 4 gradually pulled away from Yu Qianshou and Zi. From this, one could see the difference in cultivation between Yu Qianshou and them. Of course, it wasn't that Zi couldn't fly faster. It was because she had been accompanying Yu Qianshou the whole time. "Brother Yu, it's an emergency. I'll be going first." Qiu Weiyuan's voice came from the sky. Then the 5 in front sped up again. They immediately left the 2 behind further and further behind. Damn it. If you want to leave, then leave. Why are you shouting so loudly? Are you trying to bully me because I can't fly fast? Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked at Ziyi. Luckily Ziyi didn't care whether she was fast or slow. He slightly regretted that he didn't bring the whole flying instrument. Although it couldn't catch up to the speed of a tribulation-passing cultivator, it was at least faster than him. Moreover, with Ziyi controlling it, he could rest in peace. He had been flying around in the sky for the past few days and didn't really land. However, he immediately dismissed the idea. It seemed that Ziyi didn't know the way. It would be troublesome if she flew further and further away. Ever since Ziyi followed him, she would ask questions at the beginning. Now, no matter where they went, she would look around with her eyes wide open. It was as if she wanted to memorize the terrain of every place she passed. What a stupid idea. Yu Qianqiu found it funny and didn't say anything. The 2 of them flew at a moderate speed. Finally, they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley before sunset. Yu Qianqiu took out the 100 Flowers Valley entry jade archive and brought Ziyi in. Then he made an entry jade archive for Ziyi at the city gate. Ziyi held it in her hand like it was a treasure and looked at it. Then she said to Yu Qianqiu, "Thank you." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. Then he remembered that ever since he brought her out of the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea, this was the first time she had received something that belonged to her. Thinking about how this girl had helped him earn 50 million, Yu Qianqiu felt a little guilty. He decided that tonight he wouldn't care about anything else. He would be extravagant just for this girl. He couldn't let the horse run away without feeding it grass, could he? As soon as they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley, many people immediately recognized Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu didn't care. He brought Ziyi straight to the best restaurant in the area, the 100 Flowers House. After entering, he knocked on the counter and said, "Give me the best private room with a view to the night view of the 100 Flowers Valley. Give me the best dishes and wine." The innkeeper was obviously a newcomer. He didn't know who Yu Qianqiu was. After looking at the ordinary clothes Yu Qianqiu was wearing, he smiled and said, "The best private room we have here plus the best dishes and wine will cost at least 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Are you sure you want it?" 1,000 high-grade spirit stones? Ziyi's eyes widened. She quickly tugged at Yu Qianqiu and said, "That much? Let's find a cheaper room." Yu Qianqiu wasn't afraid of people being mean to him. He could be even meaner than them. However, he couldn't stand people being nice to him. After hearing Ziyi's words, Yu Qianqiu immediately turned around and slammed his palm on the counter. With a bang sound, he directly collapsed the counter. He shouted in a deep voice, "Are you afraid that I can't afford it?" Ziyi was stunned. She didn't know why he was so angry. The innkeeper saw that the counter had been destroyed. Wasn't this causing trouble? His face immediately darkened. He said sternly, "What are you trying to do?" Someone actually dared to cause trouble at the 100 Flowers house in the 100 Flowers Valley. There were many people inside and outside the store who came to watch the show. Chapter 385. Isn't that Yu Qianqiu? So it's that madman. No wonder. Hearing that, Yu Qianqiu, who was already in a bad mood, immediately took out a big black machete from his storage bag. Wherever the blade pointed, everyone retreated. "Who's tired of living? Why don't you say a few words for me? I'll make sure you're satisfied." Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly with the machete in hand. No one said anything. Sure enough, the bigger the machete, the more intimidating it was. There was an old man in the store who recognized Yu Qianqiu. He quickly whispered a few words into the manager's ear. However, it seemed like the manager had already heard everyone's words, especially that rather unique machete, which was unique in the cultivation world. It was hard not to know who the person in front of him was. Yu Qianqiu turned the machete around and pointed it at the manager. The manager's expression changed. He immediately smiled and said, "So it's Mr. Yu. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. If you have any orders, just tell me. As long as I can do it, I'll do my best." The manager had no choice but to admit defeat. This guy was famous for being a madman in the cultivation world. Was there anyone he didn't dare to hit? No. Was there anyone he didn't dare to kill? No. Even the dignified sect master Ong Guangceng was killed by him, but he was still alive and kicking here. So what if he broke a counter? What was the point of a small manager's face? The blade of that big black machete was just a little bit away from pointing at the manager's head. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and said, "You're a snob. If you don't want me to tear down the 100 Flowers residence, hurry up and prepare a private room. Yu Qianqiu knew how to play this game. Some people weren't afraid of good people, but they were afraid of hooligans. Since his reputation wasn't good, he might as well be unreasonable. The onlookers at the side were convinced. This guy was an out-and-out madman. He came all the way to the 100 Flowers Valley to tear down the 100 Flowers Palace. There would probably be a good show to watch. It was Ziyi's first time seeing such a bandit side of Yu Qianqiu. She was really a little surprised. No need to prepare, no need to prepare. There's an empty private room upstairs. Follow me. The manager carefully moved away from the machete and led the way upstairs. Before Yu Qianqiu went up the stairs, he coldly swept his eyes over the crowd. They all acted as if they didn't care about him and dispersed. But after they left, they gathered at a place not far from the 100 Flowers house and waited, ready to watch the show. Sure enough, as soon as Yu Qianqiu went upstairs, an attendant immediately ran out of the store and flew towards the Flower Palace. Everyone's eyes lit up and they continued to wait. Zhang Gui led the two of them to the private room on the top floor and asked them to wait for a moment before he turned and ran down the stairs. The manager here elegant and elegance AA there's AA there. TAA restaurant. Ziyi asked curiously, is this really a restaurant? What an idiotic question. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He walked to the window and pushed it open. A cool breeze blew in. It was mixed with the fragrance of the 100 Flowers Valley's flowers. Ziyi also came after smelling the fragrance. The two of them stood at the window. The sun had just set. A patch of burning clouds dyed the sky red. The mountains were hazy under the twilight. Tired birds flew across the sky and returned to the forest. Downstairs was the market of the 100 Flowers Valley. Although it was already night, it was still bustling with activity. The commoners in the cultivation world lit up their fluorescent stones. They didn't want to give up the chance to earn spirit stones at night. All of this was new to Ziyi, who stayed in the South Sea purple bamboo forest for a long time. She couldn't get enough of it. She pointed at those people and asked, "What are they doing?" "They're making money like us, of course," Yu Qianqiu replied. "Can we make money like that?" Ziyi asked doubtfully. Then she nodded and said, "Then let's not leave here. We'll make money here first. It's a waste of time to run around all day. We don't know when we'll be able to complete Senior Bai's trust." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at her. It was the first time he found this one-track-minded girl so cute. He smiled and said, "They want to live a peaceful life. So they're making a small amount of money. But we're making a lot of money. If you follow me, you won't have to make these small amounts of money." Baihua Fairy and her daughter Yan Zixia of Baihua Palace were worried about Yan Bugui and his men. Although they were stopped by the people from the Cultivation Alliance, and Qiu Wuyuan and the others who came in time to persuade them to leave, Yan Bugui kept saying that he would come every day until the mother and daughter agreed to meet him. The mother and daughter were really tired. But before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. A disciple of Baihua Palace quickly came and reported, "Palace Master, someone from Baihua Palace reported that Yu Qianqiu just caused trouble at Baihua Palace. He even broke the counter. How should we deal with him?" "Yu Qianqiu?" Baihua Fairy was a little surprised and asked, "The one who held the blade drawing ceremony, Yu Qianqiu?" The disciple bowed and said, "It should be him. Someone reported that he even took out that blade to scare everyone. He's very shameless, so it can't be anyone else but him." The mother and daughter exchanged glances. Just a few days ago they received a message from Ma Jiugu, saying that if they ever run into any trouble in the future, they can look for Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu wouldn't shirk their responsibility and would have a way to solve it for them. The mother and daughter were still confused by this. Although Yu Qianqiu was quite famous in the cultivation world, what problem could he possibly help them solve? But Ma Jiugu wasn't one to speak carelessly. Now, before they even looked for him to solve their problem, he's already causing trouble. "I'll go take a look," Yan Zixia said. As she was about to leave, her mother called out, "Zixia, it's best if you don't go out. If you run into your father, you'll be in trouble again." Baihua Fairy waved her hand at the disciple and said, "Leave. Don't look into Yu Qianqiu's matter. All of his expenses at Baihua Palace will be free." The disciple was a bit surprised but still followed her words and left. Yan Zixia's eyes flickered as she looked outside the palace, not knowing what she was thinking. After enjoying the scenery for a while, Yu Qianqiu still didn't see any food being served. Just as he was feeling strange, he suddenly noticed that many people downstairs were looking at them as if they were watching a show. Yu Qianqiu's expression suddenly changed. This shopkeeper was clearly stalling for time. he might have gone to Baihua Palace to look for reinforcements. He slammed his palm on the windowsill and said in a low voice, "Do you really think I don't dare to burn down Baihua Palace?" Ziyi, who was admiring the scenery outside, was surprised, not knowing why he suddenly got angry. At this time the shopkeeper's voice came from outside, "Mister, don't worry, the food is here." As soon as the shopkeeper came in, a few waiters came in with trays of food and wine, quickly arranging them on the table. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and asked, "Why are you so late? Do you want to do something?" "Mister, you misunderstand." The shopkeeper bowed with a smile, "We just received an order from the palace lord. The palace lord said to treat you well, and all the expenses of Baihua Palace will be waived. You see, since the palace lord has already given the order, we naturally don't dare to delay, so the preparation time is a bit long." For this shopkeeper to be sent to be the shopkeeper of Baihua Palace, he wasn't completely useless, he was quite good with words. When Yu Qianqiu heard about the palace lord of Baihua Palace, he immediately remembered Ma Jiugu's request. It would be a bit too much if he continued to make trouble. Seeing that the food and wine were already served, he waved his hand, "All of you can leave. Thank the palace lord for her kindness, I will thank her in person if there's a chance." "Okay, enjoy." The shopkeeper nodded and bowed, then led the waiters away. Yu Qianqiu walked around the table full of food and wine, and found that the dishes were exquisite as expected. He waved his hand at Ziyi, who was looking at him, "Eat." He took the lead to sit down and opened his mouth to eat. It would be a waste not to eat something that didn't cost money. "Shopkeeper just said that it's free, does it cost money?" Ziyi sat down and asked. With food in his mouth, Yu Qianqiu nodded repeatedly, "It's free, eat as much as you want, otherwise it will be a waste." Hearing that it really didn't cost money, Ziyi's eyes lit up, and she immediately didn't stand on ceremony. This was what she learned from Yu Qianqiu. Don't be polite when you shouldn't be, otherwise, you would be letting yourself down. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yu Qianqiu burped, and when he saw Ziyi stop, he was stunned. Only now did he remember something. It seemed that every time he ate, as long as he was still eating, this girl would also not stop, but as soon as he stopped, she would immediately stop eating. It seemed like this girl's appetite wasn't small. She could even keep up with his trip. Yu Qianqiu was happy. He originally wanted to be extravagant for this girl, but he didn't expect that the food and wine would be free, then he would make up for it in other ways. He stood up and smiled, "Let's go, I'll bring you out for a walk." Ziyi nodded repeatedly and stood up as well. She loved to walk around, but it was a pity that during this period of time, she had been flying non-stop in the sky. When the two of them went downstairs, they realized that the broken counter had been replaced with a new one. It was indeed fast. Yu Qianqiu walked over and knocked on the counter and said, "Shopkeeper, reserve 2 good rooms for me, I might have to stay here for a period of time." All right. The shopkeeper hurriedly agreed. This guy couldn't be provoked. Even the higher-ups didn't pursue the matter. What else could he say? After the two of them walked out of the 100-flower pavilion, the shopkeepers of the 4 noble clans, who had been waiting outside for a long time, immediately came over to greet them. Yu Qianqiu had a pleasant expression as he politely persuaded the 4 of them to return and continued strolling around with Ziyi. The people who were originally prepared to watch the show immediately dispersed in disappointment. They didn't expect that the 100 Flowers Palace actually didn't cause trouble for Yu Qianqiu, and looking at how the shopkeepers of the 4 major families treated Yu Qianqiu, it seemed like the rumor that the 4 major families and Yu Qianqiu were on the same side was indeed true. The prosperity of the shop market was quite tempting to Ziyi. Seeing every novel thing, she couldn't help but stop to take a look and touch it. She was a little reluctant to let go. Yu Qianqiu was prepared to spend money tonight, so he directly said to the shopkeeper, "I'll buy it, how much?" 10 mid-grade spirit stones. The shopkeeper replied, "Isn't the price a little high?" Yu Qianqiu frowned. "Mr. Yu, look at what you're saying, I'd fool anyone but you." The shopkeeper thought to himself, "You even dared to smash the 100 Flowers house, how would my small stall dare to provoke you?" There was no more nonsense. Yu Qianqiu also wouldn't bother with these small shop owners. He directly paid and took the things. So on and so forth, almost every stall had similar conversations. Ziyi stopped halfway and asked suspiciously, "Why does everyone here seem to know you?" Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He refused to answer this question. He directed Ziyi's thoughts back to shopping. He followed behind her, holding a storage bag in his hand. As long as Ziyi stopped to look at or touch something, he could only do 3 things: ask for the price, pay, and pack the things. It seemed like women were born to be shopaholics, especially when there was a man who was willing to pay with money following them. After shopping at the stalls, the spirit stones were spent like flowing water. The things in the shops were much more expensive than the things in the stalls. Some of them easily cost hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones. Ziyi didn't care whether she could use it or not. As long as she liked it, she would subconsciously nod at Yu Qianqiu. She didn't think about how much it cost anyway. Someone was paying. Yu Qianqiu himself also couldn't remember how many types of things he sold, regardless of the size of the items. In any case, he bought almost everything in the stalls and shops. He even filled up 2 storage bags. It was already late at night. There was no more shopping. Ziyi just remembered that she seemed to have bought a lot of things. She looked at Yu Qianqiu embarrassedly and asked weakly, "It seems like you spent a lot of money. So, isn't it a little too late to ask this now?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze had already answered her question. Ziyi became even more embarrassed. She said embarrassedly, "I really didn't mean it." "And I know you didn't mean it." Yu Qianqiu handed over the 3 storage bags and smiled. "Actually, I didn't buy much. I just filled up these 3 storage bags." Ziyi received the 3 storage bags and used her divine sense to look at them. She was shocked. She didn't expect to buy so many things just by casually strolling around. Carrying the 3 storage bags, she didn't know what to do. She once again weakly asked, "How much did you spend in total?" "It's okay. Consider these things as a gift from me. You can earn more money after you spend it as long as you are happy." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't have any intention of blaming her, Ziyi hugged the storage bags and nodded vigorously. "And then I will definitely help you earn money." She happily put away the 3 storage bags. Today could be said to be a happy day. These words made Yu Qianqiu happy. He liked to hear this the most. He felt that the money spent today was worth it. Just as he was about to bring Ziyi back to 100 Flowers House to rest, he suddenly saw an old acquaintance from supporting Immortal Island, Xionghui, walking towards him. This fellow used to eat and drink with him in the past, so Xionghui couldn't help but nod and smile. "Long time no see, how have you been?" Ziyi looked at him curiously. He really had a lot of acquaintances. Xionghui had hung out with him for a few days. They could be considered old friends. He wasn't like the others. He cupped his fists and said happily, "No matter how good I am, I can't compare to you. I heard that you came to 100 Flowers House and caused a ruckus the moment you arrived? You didn't come here just to ask about this, did you?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Xionghui shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Just now, the Cultivation Alliance received a challenge Jade Archive sent by Yenbugue. All the sects in the Cultivation Alliance have received the notice. Elder Quan asked us to inform the other individual cultivators who have already joined the Cultivation Alliance and are in the 100 Flowers Valley to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow to discuss this matter. I just heard that you are here. The leader of the Moon Clan has already vouched for you. You are now also a member of the Cultivation Alliance. Because we are familiar with each other, I specially came to find you to inform you of this matter." "Yenbugue is challenging the Cultivation Alliance?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked again to confirm, "Are you going to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow?" "Yes. Yeah. Brother Yu, I won't say any more. I still have to inform the others. We can talk about this later." Xionghui cupped his fists and left. "What does challenging the Cultivation Alliance have to do with me?" Yu Qianqiu muttered softly, turned his head and said to Ziyi, "Go back and rest." After that, he led Ziyi, who was like an obedient child, back to 100 Flowers House. Chapter 386. The next day the sun had already risen high in the sky, but Yu Qianqiu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He had been flying non-stop for the past few days, and he was indeed a little tired. Normal cultivators would probably meditate to recover, but he preferred the most primitive way of resting, sleeping. Lying on the bed with his legs spread out was also a kind of happiness. Dong dong dong. In his dream, he was still in his previous life, and he was discussing physiological problems with a few blonde and blue-eyed ladies. Unfortunately, he was awakened by a series of knocks on the door. He got up and looked around, and he couldn't help but sigh slightly. As expected, he was dreaming. The era of 4 wheels was gone forever. Dong dong dong. The knocks on the door continued, and Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted, "Who is it? Who is it? Why are you knocking on the door so early in the morning? Don't you know that you're sleeping?" He got off the bed unhappily and got up to retract all the black fiend traps that he had set up around him into his body. He had no choice but to do this. Often, people who schemed against others were also afraid of being schemed against by others. Back then he had schemed against Lu Jingguang here. Now that he was living here, he was also worried that he would be schemed against by others. After all, he had offended too many people. He had originally wanted to retreat to Utopia to rest, But he was a little worried about leaving Ze, who was as innocent as a piece of white paper here. Although Ze's cultivation was much higher than his, he was still a little worried. Speaking of which, he didn't know who was protecting who. He walked to the door and pulled it open. Just as he was about to curse, he saw Ze standing outside the door with her hands behind her back. She had an obedient expression, and there was a hint of a fawning expression on her face. This was unprecedented. Needless to say, she was the one who knocked on the door. Yu Qianqiu swallowed back his curses and asked suspiciously, "Why are you knocking on my door so early in the morning?" "It's not early. It's already noon. Didn't someone ask you to go to the Cultivation Alliance last night?" Ze asked. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes, turned around and went back to his room. As he walked, he said, "In their eyes we're just two lousy loose cultivators. Why are we involved in that? They have their meeting and we just have to take care of ourselves." He walked to the side of the bed, tilted his body and fell back down. In fact, he really wanted to get involved. In his words, the more people there were, the more opportunities there were to get rich. But when he thought that Yen Bugue had brought a group of people and had a grudge against him, he decided that it was better to avoid the brunt of the conflict. He did not want to be the one who challenged the Cultivation Alliance. That would not be pleasant. Ze entered the room and said, "But there are people from the 4 great clans waiting for you downstairs. They say they want to wait for you to go with them." "The 4 great families." Yu Qianqiu crawled up and asked, "How did you know? You went down alone?" Ze stuttered and said, "Didn't you say it's a waste not to eat something that doesn't cost money? I think the food in this restaurant is quite delicious, so I went down to order some food by myself. It just so happens that the people from the 4 major families are waiting for you downstairs. I'll help them ask you after I finish eating." "Wouldn't it be a waste not to eat it?" Yu Qianqiu was startled. It seemed that he really did say that to her. She had a strong learning ability. He couldn't sleep anymore. He used the water spell, and a stream of clear water came out of Yu Qianqiu's palm. One stream went into his mouth to clean, and the rest was used to wash his face. After washing, the turbid water gathered into a ball. Yu Qianqiu opened the window, waved his hand, and the water turned into an arrow and shot out. As for where it would land, he was too lazy to think about it. In the end, Z was completely dumbfounded. There was no one downstairs. They were probably all at the Cultivation Alliance. The 4 great clans sent 8 people. The 4 elders were Bai Shan, Tan Huazong, Jing Xingping, and Wu Anfeng. The 4 of them were at the middle stage of tribulation passing. Except for the elder from the Wu clan who looked familiar, Yu Qianqiu did not know any of them. The remaining 4 people were old acquaintances. They were the first successors of the 4 great clans, Bai Zizong and the other 3. When the 8 of them saw Yu Qianqiu, they all bowed and said, "Mr. Yu. No need to be so polite, no need to be so polite." Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved his hand. He turned around and said to Zi, "Go, get me the food you had this morning." Zi didn't say anything and went straight to the counter to order. The shopkeeper smiled and nodded, but his smile seemed a little unnatural. "Brother Bai, you guys are here too?" As soon as Yu Qianqiu said this, Bai Zizong and the other 3 quickly said, "We don't dare." Now that the seniority between them was different from before, the 4 of them didn't dare to call him brother anymore. Moreover, there were 4 elders beside him. It wasn't the right time to talk about this in front of everyone. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 4 of them and asked, "What do you want from me?" The 4 elders looked at each other and nodded. Bai Shan, the elder of the Bai clan, stood up and replied, "After the 4 great clans received the Cultivation Alliance's notice, they sent us here overnight. We learned that Sir is in the 100 Flowers Valley and has joined the Cultivation Alliance. Before we left, the elders of the 4 great clans told us that if Sir needs any help, we should do our best to cooperate." Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. The waiter of the 100 Flowers house had already served the food. He asked casually, "Do you want to eat together?" Seeing that they shook their heads, he didn't hold back and buried his head in the food. He didn't say anything and no one knew what he was thinking. The 8 of them were a little speechless. They heard about him smashing the 100 Flowers house as soon as they arrived, and they still ate and lived here. They didn't hear about the people of the 100 Flowers palace doing anything to him. After eating, Yu Qianqiu patted his stomach, looking very comfortable. Bai Zizong had stayed with him before and knew that he liked to take advantage of others. He immediately went to pay for him, but the shopkeeper didn't accept it. He said that Yu Qianqiu's expenses in the 100 Flowers house were all free, which surprised the 8 of them. Smashing the place and living for free? Was there such a good thing in the world? "I heard that the Cultivation Alliance is discussing something. Aren't you 4 great clans going? Yu Qinshu asked leisurely. Sir, didn't you join the Cultivation Alliance? Didn't you receive the notice? Bai Shan asked curiously. It wasn't hard to guess what he meant. We came here to make our stand and wait for you to go together. Of course Yu Qinshu also heard it. He paused and said, someone did inform me, but I was busy with something important just now, so I was delayed. Then sir, are you done with what you have on hand? If you're free, let's go together, Bai Shan said politely. Yu Qinshu wanted to say that he wasn't done, but he happened to meet Ziyi's strange gaze. He couldn't help but feel guilty. Thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't good. If he kept hiding here, he had to go out and get some information. How could he get rich hiding in his room? Moreover, a whole morning had passed. The Cultivation Alliance's discussion was probably almost done. It was the right time to show his face and ask for information. Alright then, let's go together. Yu Qinshu laughed. There were exactly 10 people in the group. As soon as they left the 100 Flowers house, they started pushing each other. The 4 great clans insisted that Yu Qinshu and Ziyi walk in front. However, Yu Qinshu didn't want to show off at this time, so he insisted on hiding at the back. In the end, the 4 great clans couldn't persuade him, so they let him and Ziyi follow behind. It didn't take long for the group to reach the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. At this time there were already a lot of people around. They were all people who didn't have the right to enter. Seeing that the 4 great clans had arrived, someone immediately jeered, the 4 great clans are so arrogant. Coming at this time, they really don't care about the sects. With one person taking the lead, there were others who had nothing to do and followed suit. The 4 great clans suddenly became the center of attention. Although the 4 great clans weren't happy, they wouldn't argue with these people in public. Moreover, they really came too late, so they could only look at them coldly. The jeering people took advantage of the number of people and saw that the 4 great clans didn't react, so they were very cocky. Damn it. A bunch of hooligans purposely making me show off. Yu Qinshu's mouth twitched. The 4 great clans became the center of attention. He couldn't keep a low profile even if he wanted to hide at the back. Many people realized that the person behind the 4 great clans was Yu Qinshu, so they all remained silent. However, there were those who were dumb, stupid, and loud. When Yu Qinshu showed himself, there was a person next to him who was grinning and almost spitting on Yu Qinshu's face. Bang! A fist smashed heavily on that person's face and blood and broken teeth flew out. Crack! A foot kicked from the side of that person's calf. The sound of the leg bone breaking was so crisp, and the whole leg was directly broken. Ah! That person fell to the ground and let out a scream. B*****. Yu Qinshu finally couldn't help but make a move and scolded. After some people next to that person saw who it was, they all subconsciously took a step back, just enough time for that person to hug his leg and lie on the ground howling and rolling. At this time, the surrounding people realized that the person who had just punched and kicked was Yu Qinshu, and suddenly quieted down. The people from the 4 great clans looked back and were shocked. They didn't expect that Yu Qinshu would actually make a move at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. However, the effect of this punch and kick was quite good, and the annoying noise was finally gone. The crowd in front immediately made way for them. Yu Qinshu acted like nothing had happened and followed behind the 4 great clans. After proving his identity at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance, they walked in together. On the flat ground of the Cultivation Alliance, hundreds of people sat cross-legged in a few circles. In the middle were the representatives of the top 10 sects of the righteous and demonic sections. At this time they were all looking outside. Everyone first heard many people talking about the 4 great clans, and then heard the screams outside. They didn't know what was going on. All the sects were suspicious. Could it be that the people from the 4 great clans made a move at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance? At this time the people from the 4 great clans walked in, and all the sects became more and more suspicious. What the hell are you screaming for? 2 of you go and see what exactly is going on. Qiu Weiyuan didn't know what was going on, and he shouted with a bad expression. 2 of the 10,000 demons immediately dashed out. There were many praying mats outside the venue, and the 10 of them each took one and sat at the outermost area. Although Yu Qinshu wanted to be as low-key as possible, Ziyi's purple clothes were too eye-catching. Once everyone saw Ziyi, their eyes immediately searched for him. Qiu Weiyuan looked outside, and then looked at Yu Qinshu with a face full of suspicion. At this time 2 disciples of the 10,000 demons came back and reported to him, Elder Qiu, a disciple of the 6-path demon sect, was beaten outside, but no one saw clearly who did it. The person who was beaten didn't see clearly either. The two of them were very depressed. The person who was beaten said that he was ambushed, and he didn't see clearly, but the others all stuttered and said that they didn't see clearly. Yu Qianqiu was even more stunned. There was such a good thing? A figure in the crowd jumped into the air and flipped out of the courtyard. After a while, that person came back in a flash and stood at the periphery, staring angrily at the people from the 4 great clans. He shouted, "Who dares to hurt my disciple? Quickly come out and admit your guilt." Chapter 387. The Hexapath Devil Sect was ranked 4th in the demonic Tao, just below the Corpse Sect. The one who roared at the 4 major families was the chief representative of the Hexapath Devil Sect, Yuan Jiukui. He was an outstanding figure in the demonic Tao, famous for his violent temper and battle prowess. Although the overall strength of the Hexapath Devil Sect wasn't as strong as the other top-ranked sects, Yuan Jiukui's personal strength wasn't any weaker than the other sections. "Who injured my disciple? Come out and accept your punishment." Yuan Jiukui roared once more. When he heard that his disciple was beaten up, he immediately ran out to investigate. Although the disciple didn't see who did it, he said that it was someone from the 4 major families, so he was sure that it was someone from the 4 major families who did it. How could they accept that their disciple was beaten up when all the sects were gathered here? Furthermore, the Hexapath Devil Sect had no reason to be afraid of the 4 major families, so they naturally had to get back their face. The expressions of the people from the 4 great clans changed. This was clearly against the 4 great clans. As a direct descendant of Bai Changchun, Bai Shan naturally could not let Yu Qianqiu come out to accept his punishment. Just as he was about to stand up and fight back, he was stopped by Yu Qianqiu, who was behind him. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up. He was still happy when he heard that no one saw who did it, so he wanted to maintain his silence. However, the other party had already pointed at the noses of the 4 major families. If it was any other sect, he would definitely continue to pretend that he didn't know anything. However, the 4 major families were related to him, and they would be of great help to him in the future. He didn't want to disappoint them. "I was the one who did it." Yu Qianqiu admitted it. Everyone had expected this. They were all puzzled. The 4 major families had always been neutral, and they never had any conflicts with any sections. So why would they attack someone at this moment? It was Yu Qianqiu, that madman. That made sense. "It's you?" Yuan Jiukui was slightly startled. Then anger rose in his heart. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, don't you dare run amok in the cultivation world just because you're a bandit. Others give you some face, but you really think you're something? I, Yuan Jiukui, have never put a clown like you in my eyes. How dare a scoundrel like you mess around in front of my 6 Paths demon sect? Elder brother Yuan, don't be angry, don't be angry." Qiu Weiyuan flashed over, pulled Yuan Jiukui and comforted him. "Qiu Weiyuan, get out of my way." Yuan Jiukui swung his arm, turned around, pointed at Qiu Weiyuan's nose and scolded, "I've always heard that you and this scoundrel are brothers. It's because of people like you that this scoundrel can run amok in the cultivation world. Don't call me elder brother in the future, or it will dirty my ears." Scram. Yuan Jiukui's words could be said to have hit the hearts of the people present. Although Yu Qianqiu was happy in the cultivation world, the sects that had been in the cultivation world for many years didn't really look up to Yu Qianqiu. If it wasn't for the ambiguous attitude of Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons towards Yu Qianqiu, someone would have already made a move on Yu Qianqiu. Not to mention that Yu Qianqiu had the support of the 4 major families. Yuan Jiukui's words were like a wake-up call to Yu Qianqiu. When he looked at the people in charge of the other sects, almost all of them looked down on him. Clearly they all agreed with Yuan Jiukui's words. Yu Qianqiu immediately understood his position in the cultivation world. When he suddenly attacked someone at the entrance earlier, he subconsciously thought that he was afraid of anyone because he was a scoundrel. He thought he was impressive, but in the eyes of the people with a certain level of status in the large sects, they did not look up to him at all. He could only scare those little disciples who didn't have much of a cultivation base. "How dare you!" Just when Yuan Jiukui told Qiu Weiyuan to piss off, for bellows rang out. The 4 generals of the Mo family in black furs arrived with a flash and surrounded Yuan Jiukui. Yuan Jiukui glanced around and snorted coldly. 9 people immediately shot out from the crowd and surrounded the 4 generals of the Mo family. They were clearly from the Hexapath demon sect. "When I was dominating the world, the 4 of you were still slaves to Yan Wuchen, yet you dare to yell at me now. Are you trying to rebel?" Yuan Jiukui sneered. Then he waved his hand at the 9 people from the Hexapath demon sect and called out, "Leave." I'd like to see just what the 4 generals of the 10,000 demons are capable of. The domineering nature of a demonic cultivator was completely revealed in just a few words. Everyone was slightly speechless. It seemed like Yuan Jiukui wanted to deal with the 4 generals of the Mo family alone. The people from the Hexapath demon sect did not say anything else and backed down. After being called slaves, the 4 generals of the Mo family remained cold. They were not angered at all, but they began to radiate with pressing killing intent. Qiu Weiyuan was not a good-tempered person either, but his expression immediately returned to normal. He immediately yelled out, "Stop messing around, all of you, back off." Hearing that, the 4 generals of the Mo family immediately flashed behind him. They did not even hesitate at all. "Brother Yuan, calm down. Let's talk things out. There's nothing that can't be resolved." Qiu Weiyuan was already giving face by saying something like that after being scolded. Otherwise, there was no reason for the 10,000 demons to be afraid of Yuan Jiukui with their status in the demonic sections. That's right. Now that we're facing a great enemy, let's just bear with it for now. When Zhongping from the Blood Demon Palace originally wanted to watch the show between the 10,000 demons, but seeing that Qiu Weiyuan had given in, he knew that he couldn't watch it anymore, so he stood up and said something nice. After all, the righteous sects wanted to watch the show between the demonic sects more than him. The demonic sects could watch it, but the righteous sects could not. When Ziyi saw that Yu Qianshou was in a daze after being scolded, her pretty face immediately turned cold. Senior Bai's disciple was not someone that could be scolded. She stood up and slowly walked towards Yuan Jiukui. The whole place instantly became incomparably quiet. Yuan Jiukui vigilantly looked back and his pupils shrank. He immediately turned around and got into a fighting stance. He could look down on Yu Qianshou, but he didn't dare to look down on Ziyi. This mysterious woman had fought against 7 experts in the final phase of tribulation passing. He knew that he was no match for her, but he couldn't lose the reputation of the Hexapath demon sect. Qiu Weiyuan and Wen Zhongping looked at each other. This woman was not an ordinary person. Her background was mysterious and they didn't know what her temper was like. The two of them didn't know what to do. Yuan Jiukui stared at Yu Qianshou and sneered, "A scoundrel is a scoundrel. He actually needs a woman to stand up for him." "Yuan Jiukui, watch your mouth. What's wrong with a woman?" A woman's voice sounded. In the field, 10 disciples in white from the Moon Clan stood up. The leading woman flashed over. It was Hua Yingyue, the elder of the Moon Clan. Hua Yingyue had already received a message from Jade Flower Fairy, asking her to protect Yu Qianshou and Ziyi to the best of her ability. Yuan Jiukui's words just now finally gave her an excuse. The righteous people were all stunned. How come things were getting more and more complicated? Originally, they only wanted to see the diabolism become a joke, but now even the righteous people were involved. In a second, everyone understood. Yu Qianshou and Ziyi had joined the Cultivation Alliance with the Moon Clan as their guarantor. The Moon Clan was using this as a pretext to make a fuss. The Fuxian Island and the Moon Clan had always been on good terms. Quan Deming also couldn't sit still. He flashed between the two groups and comforted, "Everyone, let's talk this out. Don't be impulsive. The matter of Yan Bugui's challenge hasn't been decided yet. If we start fighting among ourselves, we'll become a laughing stock." Being blocked by a group of women, Yuan Jiukui himself was also stunned. "Z, come back." Yu Qianshou's voice attracted everyone's attention. He walked forward and bowed deeply to Yuan Jiukui. "Senior Yuan, please calm down. I was too impulsive just now. Please forgive me." He had thought it through. He had to lower his head when it was necessary. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to integrate into this circle. If he didn't integrate into this circle, it would be hard for him to find a chance to make a fortune. He had to bear with it even if he felt uncomfortable. When his strength matured, he would be able to deal with anyone he wanted. When the various sects heard his words, they immediately felt that it was strange. This madman had always been unforgiving when he had the upper hand. Currently, with the appearance of Ziyi and the others, it was clear that he had already gained the upper hand. Yet he still ran out to apologize with such a sincere attitude. It was truly surprising. Qiu Weiyuan stared at Yu Qianshou with sparkling eyes. He wondered if he had seen wrongly. Although Yuan Jiukui's attitude was commendable, he had crippled a disciple of the Six Paths Devil sect. Naturally, Yuan Jiukui wouldn't let this matter rest just because of an apology. Yuan Jiukui glared at Lin Yun and said, "Are you trying to let this matter go with just a sentence? May I know what this junior should do to appease senior?" Yu Qianshou asked respectfully. Yuan Jiukui's gaze slowly shifted to Lin Yun's leg. he said in a solemn voice, "I won't say anything else. You broke the left leg of my disciple. If you can break your own leg, this old man will be able to answer to the sect when I return. This old man can also guarantee that the Six Paths Devil sect will treat this matter as if it never happened." The people of the four major clans also stood behind Yu Qianqiu when they heard this. They glared at Yuan Jiukui. The legs of a little disciple with low cultivation actually wanted to trade for the legs of their old ancestor's direct disciple. If they allowed this to happen, they wouldn't be able to return to the four major clans anymore. Ziyi looked at Yu Qianqiu with an expressionless face. As long as he gave the signal, she would immediately make a move. The other sects also felt that Yuan Jiukui's condition was a bit too harsh. They suspected that he didn't know how to appreciate favors. Sure enough, Yu Qianqiu's expression sank in an instant. He rubbed his nose as he looked at the crowd and sneered, "It's not difficult for me to break one of my legs, but I have something to ask all of you. Although the four great clans and I arrived a bit late, it's fine if everyone provoked and insulted us at the entrance. After all, we were the ones who were rude first." He suddenly turned around and pointed at Yuan Jiukui. He shouted, "But what gives a disciple of the Six Paths Devil sect the right to spit on my face in public? If I spit on your face, will you attack me? I'm afraid you'll even have the heart to kill me, right? There's such a thing? Then he's really asking for a beating." Everyone immediately whispered in each other's ears. Everyone had indeed heard the commotion outside, provoking and insulting the four clans. In such a chaotic situation, there was no guarantee that some naughty disciples would spit on the four clans. Yuan Jiukui was startled when he heard that. How did the Six Paths Devil sect become the ones who stirred up trouble first? But after thinking about it, he was afraid that it was really possible. He paused and said with some uncertainty, "That's not possible. I've never been afraid of anyone." Yu Qianqiu looked around and sneered, "I know that everyone has a lot of misunderstandings about me, causing my reputation in the cultivation world to be bad. But I'm not a deranged person. How could I randomly grab someone and beat them? If Senior Yuan doesn't believe me, why don't you summon the disciple who was beaten? I can confront him directly. Who is right and who is wrong will naturally be clear." Chapter 388. Yuan Jiukui's expression became gloomy. He wasn't completely clueless about that disciple, and he knew that the disciple wasn't very virtuous. But now, as Yu Qianqiu had said, he wanted to interrogate the disciple and find out that his side was in the wrong first. If that happened, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? Most importantly, he thought that he was in the right and offended several groups of people. He even threw away the face of the Devil Path's leader, the 10,000 demons. If the truth came out and it was disadvantageous to his side, he would be embarrassed. While he was hesitating, many people could see his apprehension. Qiu Weiyuan winked at Wen Zhongping and pulled Yuan Jiukui with a smile. "Old brother Yuan, for my sake, this matter ends here. Don't pursue it anymore. I'll send someone to treat that disciple's injury, and I'll definitely return him a healthy leg." "That's right. Old brother Yuan, personal grudges are a small matter, but take the big picture into consideration." Wen Zhongping also persuaded. Yuan Jiukui naturally understood that these two demonic cultivators were taking the opportunity to give him a way out. If he didn't appreciate it, then he wouldn't know how to appreciate a favor. But he didn't know if Yu Qianqiu would fight to the bitter end. This guy was famous for being merciless. Yuan Jiukui looked at Yu Qianqiu. Qiu Weiyuan understood his meaning, so he walked over to Yu Qianqiu with a smile, patted his shoulder and said, "Old brother Yu, give this old brother some face and forget it. How about we end this matter here? Since Senior Qiu has spoken, we can swallow this small grievance." Yu Qianqiu also looked at Yuan Jiukui and said, "I wonder if Senior Yuan still wants to pursue this matter." Yuan Jiukui snorted heavily, then flashed back to his original position and sat down cross-legged. His attitude was obvious, indicating that he wouldn't pursue this matter any further. "What are you snorting about? Let's see if you still dare to snort when this father destroys your Six Paths demon sect one day." Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched. "It's better if this father doesn't pursue this matter, then I won't waste my breath." He also turned around and returned to his seat. It's all right. Everyone return to your positions." Qiu Weiyuan waved his hand at the crowd and smiled. The group of people returned to their positions, and this matter was over for the time being. Ziyi was still feeling quite indignant. She looked at Yu Qianqiu beside her and wondered what had happened to him. Yesterday he had smashed someone's counter because of a single sentence, and today he was scolded in the nose and endured it. Yu Qianshou had already put this matter aside for the time being. He had thought that the discussion between the various sects had already ended, but who would have thought that it was still going on? He had no idea what had happened for it to take such a long time. He sat at the back and listened for a while before he understood. It turns out that this time, Yan Bugui brought 2 Tribulation Realm cultivators with him, as well as 50 Tribulation Realm cultivators. A total of 53 people came to Baihua Palace, intending to reunite with Baihua Fairy as husband and wife. In the end, they were obstructed by the various sects led by the supporting Immortal Island. At that time, both sides almost came to blows. It was unknown what Yan Bugui was thinking, but when he had the upper hand he forcefully endured it. Actually, everyone understood that Yan Bugui wasn't ready to officially turn against the Chinese cultivation world yet. He was probably still waiting for the foreign cultivation world's reinforcements to arrive, and the foreign cultivation world was probably also coordinating this matter. And the Chinese cultivation world wasn't ready either. The main reason was that there were too many sects, so it was hard for them to reach a consensus. The main problem was that once a fight broke out, who would contribute how much money, how much manpower, and who would be the commander. The righteous sects didn't feel at ease handing over manpower and money to the demonic sects and vice versa. In fact, no one felt at ease handing over their own things to others. A large-scale war wasn't just a fight between 2 people. Once a winner was decided, they would have to be prepared for a long period of time. The longer it lasted, the more spirit stones and manpower would be consumed, and that would be a huge number. Although all the sects had stored a lot of spirit stones for emergencies, no one would take out their money for no reason. Who didn't hope that they would contribute less money and manpower, while others would contribute more? After the war, the strength of the sects might be reshuffled. Everyone wanted to preserve their strength. The foreign cultivation world on Yan Bugui's side as well as the Chinese cultivation world were probably facing the same awkward situation, so they didn't start fighting for the time being. In short, whoever was ready first would make the first move. That was for sure. If they couldn't officially turn against each other, they could at least do something like east wind west wind, dampening the other party's morale. And so, last night, Yan Bugui suddenly sent someone to deliver a challenge Jade Archive to the Cultivation Alliance. The content was very simple. Both sides would send their people to fight 20 rounds. Regardless of whether they were dead or alive, the winner would be determined by the number of wins and losses. The loser would have to pay 1 billion high-grade spirit stones to the winner. Of course, the challenge couldn't be without rules. It was impossible for one side to send an early-stage tribulation-passing cultivator to fight, while the other side sent a late-stage tribulation-passing cultivator to kill the other side. That wouldn't be a challenge. It would be no different from seeking death. Yan Bugui's letter of challenge stated that either side could send their people to challenge the other side first. One person could go on stage repeatedly, but the person sent by the challenge side couldn't have a higher cultivation level than the challenger. Of course, if the challenge side was willing to send someone with a lower cultivation level to die, the opposing side naturally wouldn't have any objections. That night, the Chinese cultivation world replied, "Accept the challenge." This was something that couldn't be avoided. Whoever dared to say the word, avoid, would probably be drowned in spittle. But 1 billion high-grade spirit stones couldn't possibly be given to a single sect. When it came to apportioning the money and manpower, it would be a little difficult. Anyone could make the argument, but the key was which sect would contribute the money and manpower. Thus, after discussing for half a day, they still couldn't come up with a solution. In short, everyone had thousands of reasons, all of which were for them to contribute less. 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. When Yu Qianshou heard this, his eyes almost emitted a green light, and he in purple dress looked at each other in unison. Yan Bugui came from the 10,000 demons, and now he has become the scourge of the Chinese cultivation world. For this challenge, the 10,000 demons can't absolve themselves from the blame. I'm not saying that the 10,000 demons will pay all of the 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, but the 10,000 demons still have to pay the most. Before De Luo Sec's Zhu Xianxian could finish, Qiu Weiyuan jumped up and scolded, "Bullsh**t. Yan Bugui has long established his own sect. He is him and the 10,000 demons is 10,000 demons. If the De Luo sect doesn't want to pay, then just say it. Don't always use this as an excuse. This is the whole Chinese cultivation world's business, not the 10,000 demons' business." "Qiu Weiyuan, what you said is wrong. Why didn't someone like Yan Bugui come from other sects, but from the 10,000 demons? If it wasn't for the 10,000 demons' lack of discipline, this wouldn't have happened. I think Elder Zhu is right. The 10,000 demons should pay the most. The one who said this was the sword faction's elder Duan Tianbua, who was ranked 4th in the righteous sections. That's right. That's right. A group of righteous sects echoed, and they all pointed their spears at the 10,000 demons. The expressions of the demons kept changing. Logically speaking, they should be supporting the 10,000 demons, but only the 10,000 demons could be used against them. If they had to pay more, then so be it. After all, the 10,000 demons had a lot of money, so this amount of money was nothing. Yu Qianshou finally understood. No wonder he saw Qiu Weiyuan's face the moment he came in. He had become the target of everyone's attacks. So, Yan Bugui had caused trouble, and now the 10,000 demons had become the scapegoat. It was really hard on Qiu Weiyuan, who had been running around outside. Duan Tianbua, you're not a good person either. You call yourself a righteous sect, but you're faster than anyone else when something happens. Fine. If you think that this has nothing to do with your sword faction, then please withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance. We, the 10,000 demons, will pay for your sword faction's money. Qiu Weiyuan pointed at Duan Tianbua's nose and scolded him. Then he looked around at the crowd and patted his chest loudly. If the righteous sects think that this has nothing to do with you, you can all withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance. We, the 10,000 demons, will pay for the righteous sect's money. A bunch of shameless people who call themselves righteous sects, tui. Qiu Weiyuan argued with the crowd. He was so angry that his face was red. After he said those harsh words, a few righteous sects immediately stood up and said, Qiu Weiyuan, speak clearly. Who are you calling shameless? I'm calling a bunch of cowards. Whoever wants to cower in this matter, I'll scold them. Whoever wants to fight, I'll play with them. Qiu Weiyuan was too lazy to argue anymore. He could not argue clearly anyway. He would die of exhaustion if he kept arguing with so many people. He happened to glance at Yu Qianshou just now, and his heart lit up. Although he was not as good with words as Yu Qianshou and could always reason, he could learn from Yu Qianshou and act shamelessly, right? Who can still snatch money from me? As soon as the righteous sects stood up, there was no need to mention the 4 generals of the demon clan. A few other sects from the demon clan also stood up. It was fine if they just talked about it, but if they really fought, the other sects from the demon clan would definitely not let the 10,000 demons suffer losses. This time it was lively. As one of the sects stood up, the second one stood up. In the end, the situation of the 10,000 demons alone became a situation where the righteous and the demon clan were fighting. Qiu Weiyuan's pressure was instantly reduced. He glanced at Yu Qianshou, who was pinching his chin and watching the show. He thought to himself, no wonder this guy could always stir up big trouble with just a little bit of it. This shameless method was just a try, and immediately one family's problem became everyone's problem. At the same time, he could also save himself some trouble. It was worth learning. The situation was a little out of control. The 4 great clans had always been neutral. They did not belong to the demon clan or the righteous clan. A few people looked at Yu Qianshou, who was pinching his chin, and decided to just watch the show. Yu Qianshou was very happy in his heart. The representatives from the various sects really did not disappoint the sections. They did their best to fight for the greatest benefits for their sections. Everyone please calm down. I have an idea, but I don't know if everyone is willing to listen to it. Quan Deming from Fuxian Island saw that the commotion was getting out of hand. He frowned and thought for a while, then immediately shouted. Hearing that there was an idea, and it might even be related to their sects, everyone immediately quieted down and looked at Quan Deming. The latter waved his hand and said, everyone sit down. It's not a solution to keep arguing like this. Listen to me slowly. Qiu Weiyuan took the lead and sat down first. After everyone started arguing, he did not say anything. Instead, he stayed out of it. The people from the various sects also sat down one after another. Chapter 389. Quan Deming stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. He scanned the crowd and said slowly, if possible, the top 10 sects of the righteous and demon sects should share the 1 billion. Before he could finish, Yuan Jiokui laughed and said, that's not a good idea. How can our wealth compare to your supporting Immortal Island? This seems to be unfair. Brother Yuan, why don't you listen to Elder Quan first? I believe Elder Quan won't speak without thinking. Qiu Weiyuan stopped him. In fact, even if there was nothing else, he would agree with this. 20 sects would share 1 billion, and each sect would only get 50 million. This was worth it. All right, I'll listen to supporting Xian Island's opinion. Yuan Jiokui smiled disapprovingly. Quan Deming nodded and said, 1 billion is not a small number, but it would be a joke to ask the entire Chinese cultivation world to share it. My suggestion is that supporting Xian Island and 10,000 demons each contribute 100 million. Daluo sect, Moon sect, Blood Demon Palace, and Corpse sect each contribute 50 million. Our 6 sects will take 400 million, and the remaining 600 million will be shared by the other 14 sections. What do you all think? Hearing this, other than the top 10 sects of the righteous and demon sects, the other sects all nodded in agreement. They were not allowed to contribute even one spiritual stone. It would be strange if they didn't agree. I think it's fine. Qiu Weiyuan also stood up and patted his chest. 10,000 demons will contribute this 100 million. 100 million was far better than 10,000 demons. Plus, 10,000 demons was the leader of the demonic sects, so it was reasonable for them to contribute a little more than the other sections. A leader should have the bearing of a leader. I think it's fine. The Daluo sect, Moon sect, Blood Demon Palace, and Corpse sect naturally wouldn't have any objections. First of all, Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons offered twice as much as them. Second, with their status in the cultivation world, offering 50 million was just an average amount. If they still had any objections, it would be too unreasonable. The other 14 sects felt that it was not worth it. The 600 million would be divided among the 14 sects, and each sect would have to share more than 40 million. It was not much different from 20 sects sharing it equally, but most people agreed. It would not be difficult for them to fork out this amount of money. In addition, the few leading sects had already agreed, so it would not be good for anyone to say no. Thus, it was equivalent to tacitly agreeing. Elder Quan, since we have all paid, how should we divide the 1 billion high-grade spirit stones if we win? Yuan Jiukuei suddenly asked. The other sects also stared at Quan Deming. That's right. The matter of splitting the money had to be made clear, otherwise there would be problems later on. That's easy. Quan Deming said eloquently, there are only 20 matches in total. Since 20 sects have paid up, I believe that it won't be a problem for 20 of our sects to randomly send out 20 people. The 20 sects that have paid up can all send their people up to fight. If they win, the sect that pays the money will take back the money that the other sects have to share. The 1 billion earned will be divided into 20 portions. As long as the sect wins one match, they will get 50 million. The number of matches they win will be the same. If the sect wins all 20 matches, they will take all the 1 billion earned. My supporting Immortal Island will not have any objections. If we lose in the end, everyone can only admit that they are useless. They will definitely not give us the money for free. Haha. Everyone roared with laughter. This was a fair method, so no one had any objections. At least if they won, they would not lose money. In addition, of course, the more effort they put in, the more benefits they would get. This logic was reasonable everywhere. Just when everyone thought the problem had been solved, Yuan Jiukuei suddenly stood up and said, I still feel that something is wrong. This was a good method and it was already considered fair. What was wrong with it? Qiu Weiyuan turned around and said with a slight frown, Brother Yuan, could it be that you have another brilliant idea? Yuan Jiukuei pointed at the 4 major families and said in a clear voice, the combined strength of the 4 major families is not weaker than some of the top 10 sections. I think the 4 major families should also participate. The remaining 600 million will be divided equally among the 15 families. Each family will get 40 million, which is just right. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. How could he easily believe the words of that scoundrel, Yu Qianqiu? But he had tacitly agreed not to pursue the matter. Thinking about it, he felt uncomfortable. When he remembered that the 4 major families were on the same side as Yu Qianqiu, he came up with this idea. If they won this challenge, they could talk about it later. If they lost, they could let the 4 major families lose some money. It could also make those people feel disgusted. Everyone knew that Yuan Jiukuei still had grievances in his heart. They all looked at the 4 major families. Presumably, the 4 major families would not be able to refuse in this situation. Sure enough, Baishan stood up and said, although the 4 major families do not belong to the righteous or demonic sects, we are also part of China. It is reasonable for us to contribute money. After saying that, he sat down. This was also a sign of agreement. Yu Qianqiu was happy in his heart. He was worried that he could not find an excuse to intervene and make money. Now the opportunity came to him. That kid outside did not beat him for nothing. Since the 4 major families have agreed, if there is no other objection, then this matter is settled. Quan Deming asked Qiu Weiyuan, Elder Qiu, what do you think? I have no objection. Just let me know when you want to pay. 10,000 demons will not refuse. Chiu Wuyuan laughed. He was in a good mood now that a troublesome matter had been solved. Quan Deming nodded and said to the crowd, "The other party has more than 50 experts in the crossing calamity stage and 2 in the final stage. If you want to take this opportunity to make money, you might as well call for experts from your sect. This is much faster than us working hard to earn spirit stones from the spirit stone mine." Everyone laughed and suddenly became spirited, as if it was not difficult to make money. Most people felt that this matter did not concern them and finally did not have to worry. After the matter was settled, the group of people dispersed, leaving a large pile of praying mats on the ground. Naturally, the unlucky disciples on duty would come to clean it up. Ignoring the strange gazes of the outsiders, Yu Qianqiu and the others followed Bai Shan to the Bai family's shop. They had something to discuss. There were some decorations here, so their conversation would not be easily overheard. The shopkeeper of the Bai family's shop had already heard about Yu Qianqiu beating people at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. He was speechless when he saw him. It was hard to imagine how the family could be entangled with such a person. After leading them to the back, the shopkeeper left. The matters of the higher-ups were not something that a shopkeeper like him could care about. The date set by the Cultivation Alliance and Yanbugue was tomorrow. Remembering that the other party had 2 experts in the final stage of the Crossing Calamity stage, after a discussion, Bai Shan said solemnly, "Since we have agreed to participate, we must prevent accidents. I will send a message back now and ask the family to invite 2 elders to come here overnight in case of emergencies." The others also nodded and felt that this was appropriate. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands and laughed, "That is too troublesome. Why bother 2 elders to come here overnight? I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it." Wasn't he talking nonsense? If he said it, how could the people of the 4 families not let him say it? The attitude of the 8 people immediately became respectful. Bai Shan cupped his hands and said, "If you have something to say, please say it. We are all ears." Ha ha ha. Yu Qianqiu couldn't stop laughing shyly. He seemed to be a little embarrassed. After a while, he rubbed his hands and said, "This is what I think. For this challenge, the 4 families just need to put their names on it. I will pay the 40 million and Zi and I will fight. You don't have to worry about it. As for that, if we win, haha. You know that I am a little short of money. We can keep the money we win for the time being. What do you think of my idea?" For money again. The few people looked at each other. Bai Shan looked at him and said suspiciously, "I wonder what stage has Mr.'s cultivation reached? Please tell us so that we can be prepared." Ah. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "I am really ashamed. I am still in the early stage of nascent soul." The few people looked at each other and didn't say anything. Although it was already very fast for him to reach this stage at his age, this challenge was not a trivial matter. It was not a matter of life and death. Bai Shan shook his head and said, "Please forgive me, mister. I dare not let you take this risk. If there is any accident, I really can't explain to the family." "What are you afraid of? Isn't Luo Qingtian at the Crossing Calamity stage? Didn't you still lose to me in the end? You don't have to worry. It is settled. Send the news back. If the 4 families have any objections, let them come to me. You don't need to explain anything." Yu Qianqiu seemed to be more interested in money than his life. He turned around and said to Zi, "Zi, I will leave the last stage of the Crossing Calamity stage to you. Do you have the confidence to win?" "Yes." Zi nodded. At the side, Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at Zi with complicated expressions. There was a hint of admiration in their gazes. She was beautiful, pure, and had an extraordinary temperament. In addition, she had a high cultivation base and a mysterious background. She was indeed quite tempting. This time, the 4 of them had been sent here to build a good relationship with Yu Qianqiu. However, at the same time, they had received a rather ambiguous mission. If possible, it would be best if they could develop feelings for Zi. Other than Wu Liqing, the other 3 were a little unwilling at first because they had never seen her before. Who knew what kind of person she was? But they also knew that for a big family like theirs, sometimes they couldn't make decisions about relationships. However, when they saw Zi, they were all attracted. They didn't expect a cultivator in the last stage of the Crossing Calamity stage to be so young and beautiful. They were immediately attracted. However, such a beautiful woman was ordered around by Yu Qianqiu as a maid. It was really a pity. However, they were relieved. Yu Qianqiu clearly didn't have any other relationship with Zi. When you attack, don't be soft. If you can kill them, don't let them go. Even if you let them go, they won't be grateful. Before you go, Think about what my master did when 16 soul-forming cultivators joined hands to fight against him. As long as they are your opponents, don't let any of them go. Don't be soft. Kill them all. Yu Qianqiu warned earnestly. He was afraid that Ziyi would be soft because she didn't have much experience. In a battle of life and death, she would be at a disadvantage. This girl was most convinced by Bai Changchun. At this time, he could only bring up Bai Changchun to strengthen her confidence. However, when these words fell into the ears of the four families, they were shocked. They all knew who Yu Qianqiu's master was. In other words, their ancestors' cultivation was so strong that it was shocking. Chapter 390. Ziyi's gaze instantly became firm, and she nodded her head seriously. Bai Shan cupped his hands and bowed to Yu Qianqiu excitedly. Sir, can you tell us in detail about the Battle of the East Sea that you mentioned just now? The people of the four great clans all cast expectant gazes at Yu Qianqiu. The legendary Battle of the Soul Formation stage was indeed worthy of admiration. Furthermore, the most powerful protagonists were their own relatives, so the anticipation was even stronger. Tell you in detail? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thought to himself, I heard it from Nongzhu, that old handsome guy. How can I tell you in detail? He looked serious and sighed, I can only be fascinated. It's indescribable, indescribable. That kind of realm is beyond our reach. Let's not talk about it. Ziyi rarely spoke in front of outsiders. At this moment, she clenched her fists and said in a woman's voice, Elder Bai is undoubtedly the most powerful cultivator in the world. Ziyi will admire you for life. Her words were even more inspiring than Yu Qianqiu's. The people from the four major families were extremely excited, especially the people from the Bai family. They blushed and couldn't express their emotions for a long time. Ziyi, let's go back. Yu Qianqiu turned around and kept shaking his head and sighing as if he had really seen the battle. Ziyi followed him and left, leaving the people from the four major families to daydream. They imagined how the thin elder in the portrait in the ancestral hall of their family looked in reality. He was undoubtedly the most powerful cultivator in the world. If I can't see our ancestor once in this life, I, Bai Zitsong, will regret it for the rest of my life. Bai Zitsong, who had been standing in silence for a long time, suddenly said while gritting his teeth. Bai Shan let out a long sigh and said, It's not easy to see our ancestor. Didn't you hear what your father said? The great ancestor was the punishment enforcer of the demon ghost realm and lived in the center of the demon ghost realm. Even if you were at the end of the tribulation transcendent stage, you would not be able to go deep into the demon ghost realm, let alone the place where the great ancestor lived. If you really want to go, the only way is to rely on Yu Qianqiu. If Yu Qianqiu is willing to introduce you, it shouldn't be a big problem. Bai Zitsong suddenly turned his head and said, Third uncle, if Li Cheng and the other three could be personally taught by our ancestor, once we succeed in our cultivation, we would be able to learn 1/100th of our ancestor's abilities. Who in the Chinese cultivation world would dare to make things difficult for us? I don't understand why the old ancestor would not care about his own descendants and instead accept an outsider as a personal disciple. Could it be that none of us descendants can enter the old ancestor's eyes? This sudden statement stunned the people of the four families. Tan Fei, Wu Liqing and Jing Zhuo all breathed rapidly. Needless to say, it would be beneficial to be taught by the great ancestor of the world's #1 expert. When the four heirs thought of the extraordinary purple dress following beside Yu Qianqiu, their expressions became a little strange. How dare you? Bai Shan suddenly shouted, Bai Zitsong, are you out of your mind? How can the great ancestor's thoughts be guessed by ordinary people? The great ancestor must have his own reasons for doing this. It's not something you can comment on. Third uncle, don't tell me you still don't understand? Bai Zitsong pointed in the direction where the two of them went and said angrily, Who is the hidden force behind him? Could he really comprehend such a mysterious and strange technique by himself? Who gave him those 2 treasured sabers? Without a doubt, all of these were given to him by the great ancestor. Otherwise, how could a lowly disciple like him surpass our cultivation base in such a short period of time? He dares to do whatever he wants in the cultivation world because he has the great ancestor's support. I don't understand why the great ancestor would do this. Jealousy always makes people lose their minds easily. When Yu Qianqiu was just a lowly disciple, Bai Shan could still bow down to him. Now Yu Qianqiu was higher than him in every aspect. Even his seniority was higher than him. When he saw that Ziyi was obedient to Yu Qianqiu's words, An unknown fire completely ignited the dissatisfaction in his heart. Although Wu Liqing and the other two had similar thoughts, they never had such strong feelings. They were stunned by Bai Zizong's words. They did not expect Bai Zizong to say something like this. Tan Huazong, Jing Xingping and Wu Anfeng looked at each other. Bai Shan was trembling with anger. He pointed his finger and yelled, "Bastard, kneel down." Bai Zizong clenched his teeth and kneeled in front of Bai Shan. His expression showed his unwillingness. Bai Shan said bitterly, "Without the great ancestor, there would be no 4 major clans. Jealousy blinds your eyes, you can't achieve anything. How dare you talk about the great ancestor's right and wrong? Do you think you're qualified to take over the Bai clan in the future? You treacherous bastard, slap yourself." Slap, slap, slap. Bai Zizong slapped his own mouth without saying anything. He slapped his own mouth again and again. Wu Liqing and the other two did not know what to do. Tan Huazong and the other two quickly advised, "Brother Bai, it's enough to teach him a lesson. It's understandable for a young man to say something rash. You don't have to go overboard." Bai Zizong, who was slapping himself, suddenly stopped. He touched his face, shook his head and smiled bitterly. He kowtowed to Bai Shan and said, "Third uncle, I know I'm wrong. I was blinded by jealousy just now and said something rash. Please forgive me." The few of them were speechless by his sudden change. Yanbu Gue and the Cultivation Alliance's challenge location was in a mountain not too far away from the 100 Flowers Valley. To be exact, it should be in a valley surrounded by mountains. It took some effort to choose this place. People could stand around and watch, and the spacious valley in the middle was just right for the fight. There were probably thousands of people on the surrounding mountains. This was the result of the sects restraining their disciples. Otherwise, there would be more people coming to watch the fight. On Yanbu Gue's side, there were about 50 people including himself. From their clothes, most of them were cultivators from other clans. These dozens of people stood on the mountain top facing the many cultivators, but they did not show any fear. It was as if they were looking down on the cultivators of China. Both sides had already sent people to the middle to discuss the start of the fight. Ever since Yanbu Gue found out that Yu Qianshou was among the crowd on the opposite mountain top, his eyes rarely moved, filled with hatred. If it wasn't for this guy, his family wouldn't be in such an awkward situation. The husband and wife couldn't be together, they colluded with other clans to protect themselves, and even their sect became enemies. Now that they had reached a point where it was either win or die, there was no way out. How could Yu Qianshou not notice Yanbu Gue, who was the center of attention? Seeing that he kept staring at him, he didn't want to compete with Yanbu Gue with his stare, but it was uncomfortable to be stared at like that. He looked around and found the position of the 10,000 demons. They were not far away, so he slowly walked to the side of Qiu Weiyuan and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Qiu." "Greetings, greetings, greetings." Qiu Weiyuan looked him up and down. When did this guy become so proactive? It seemed like he was always the one looking for him first. Therefore, with a stomach full of questions, he asked, "Brother Yu, are you looking for me?" The 10,000 demons also looked at him. "Ah, nothing, nothing." Yu Qianshou looked around with a face full of smiles. "The weather today is really good." The 10,000 demons were not in a good mood. None of them were happy that the son of the previous sect leader had caused such trouble. Thinking about the possibility of fighting him again, they felt even more depressed. At this moment, Yu Qianshou came over to talk about the weather. The group looked at the sky and felt that it was normal. They didn't notice anything special, but they suspected that there was a deeper meaning behind his words. They were all confused. "Are you really okay?" Qiu Weiyuan asked doubtfully. I'm fine." Yu Qianshou confirmed it again. Then he was too lazy to talk nonsense beside Qiu Weiyuan. He seemed to be chatting happily with the 10,000 demons from time to time, creating a harmonious atmosphere. The 10,000 demons reluctantly answered him. They didn't have the mood to talk nonsense with him now. But when this scene fell into the eyes of Yanbu Gue, who was on the opposite mountain, he was so disgusted that he almost broke his teeth from gritting them. "What the hell is this guy doing?" Qiu Weiyuan cursed silently. The more Yu Qianshou said that he was fine, the more suspicious he became. He and Yu Qianshou had known each other for a long time. At that time, Yu Qianshou hadn't joined Fuxian Island yet. Once they met, Yu Qianshou started to flatter Qiu Weiyuan. Qiu Weiyuan already knew that this guy wasn't a good person. What happened later also confirmed his guess. Now that he suddenly acted like this, Qiu Weiyuan started to look around suspiciously. When his eyes met the hateful eyes on the opposite mountain, he was stunned. Then he understood everything. This guy was obviously using the 10,000 demons to make Yen Bugue angry. He was vicious. Chiu Weiyuan looked at Yu Qianshou, who was still talking nonsense with the 10,000 demons. His expression changed. He said in a low voice, "Yu Qianshou, you've achieved your goal. Go back to your position." "Senior Chiu, what do you mean by that?" Yu Qianshou pretended to be confused. "Please go back." Chiu Weiyuan raised his hand and said bluntly. The dignified Myriad Demon's Palace, the leader of the demonic path, had been used by this fellow like a bunch of blind people. How could they possibly have the nerve to explain themselves so clearly? Yu Qianshou's expression darkened. He said in a cold voice, "It seems that I'm not welcome in the 10,000 demons. I originally wanted to shamelessly ask to join the 10,000 demons after the competition. That's why I came here to get in touch with you guys. Seems that I was thinking too much. Elder Chiu, please help me thank Palace Leader Bu for inviting me in person. It's not that I don't know what's good for me, but the threshold to join the 10,000 demons is too high. Yu Qianshou can't cross it. Goodbye." He waved his hand and walked away. The 10,000 demons looked at Chiu Weiyuan in surprise. For someone like Yu Qianshou, who had mysterious skills and a spiritual treasure, the 10,000 demons couldn't wait to recruit him. "Why did you chase him away?" One of the late tribulation cultivators who rushed here overnight asked in a low voice. "Chiu Weiyuan, what's going on?" Chiu Weiyuan was speechless. He thought to himself, "Did I really think too much and misunderstand? If this guy really wants to join the 10,000 demons, then You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.